I mean, I was selling almost a house a day.
What have you learned from or about negotiating?
It's not about what the thing costs. In the course of this project, his company went bankrupt and left me holding the bag. I lost $4 million in capital in one day. Gone.
Today's episode was recorded in 2023 and features Alan Gammons Jr. He is an entrepreneur, investor, founding member of the Make a Difference Foundation, and leader of the Gammons Team. At 26 years old, just 2 years after starting in the real estate industry, Alan became the top agent in Rhode Island and one of the top 100 agents in the United States. In 2010, Alan reached the milestone of selling his 5,000th house, and he scaled his brokerage business up to over 7 offices before eventually merging with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services.
So that's kind of really how we got into real estate. It was the publishing thing kind of slid into it because one of my clients talked me into getting my real estate license. And 2 years later, I was a top agent in Rhode Island when I was 26. The biggest mistake that I ever made was it's just one of those things, and it's part of, you say, why are you successful? How did you build your business? One of the things that I truly believe in is being very loyal. And now I don't own my own company now. You know that I sold my company.
Right. You've sold it twice, right?
Twice, yeah.
How did you do that?
You know, everybody wants to say, I'm the number one at this, I'm the number one at that. And, you know, ultimately, who gives a shit? You look at all these real estate agents with all these numbers behind them, letters and all this shit. I don't even know what the hell it is. You know, like, I am a professional divorce realty.
This is our conversation with Alan Gammons Jr.
I'm in one of those businesses where it's hard to be home and not be tempted to work.
Right.
You know, sitting on the couch on Sunday morning, you know, nothing on the horizon, say, I'm going to go into the office kind of thing. You know, that's problematic when your family is growing up. But so I've kind of found ways to escape, but not be so far away that I can't get back. You know, I had a boat. We just, you know, we spent a lot of time on the vineyard in Nantucket on a boat, but I could always jump on a plane or a ferry home if I needed to get home for something quickly, you know. And with the internet and cell phones, the business changed dramatically, you know. Some for the good, some for the bad, you know, because you can't detach as much.
Right.
But yeah, I found it pretty, you know, with 4 kids, I had to kind of find a happy medium, you know.
And did you always know you'd go into real estate, or
Totally by accident.
how did you fall into that?
So I left college, my sophomore year in college, to start a publishing company because I had learned desktop publishing at the infancy and was one of the first people ever to create a publication on desktop publishing in Rhode Island. At that time, and that's kind of how I knew Linda around that time. If you went to a printer to create a newspaper, a magazine, or even flyers, there was CompuGraphic typesetting machines and metal plates that created magazines and newspapers. And with the Apple or the Macintosh coming out, you were able to create a periodical newspaper in 4 hours that would take 5 people all week to create, or all night. Like, you know, it changed. It was an industry changer. So it took, you know, in the printing industry, it took $1 million pieces of equipment and made them into boat moorings overnight because they had no value whatsoever, because what they were doing was what's the word I want to use? Obsolete, because you could sit down at a Mac and bang out a magazine, newspaper, flyer, you know, corporate report, whatever it was, in a matter of hours. Put a floppy disk in the printer's equipment, and you're printing. So it changed. So I left. I started doing some publications on my own, specialty publications, and I was involved with as a partner with the original East Greenwich magazine, which is probably predates you,
Right.
Being here. It was
But I grew up here.
Did you remember the East Greenwich magazine?
I do.
Okay.
I remembered all the...
Okay, so I started that with a friend of mine's father owned a company called Beacon Press in Warwick, and they printed the Warwick Beacon, a lot of the other local newspapers all over the state. And again, he had one of those big old CompuGraphic typesetting machines, and I came in and bang, 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 and we became fast partners in a lot of things. And he's like was a second father to me at the time. I, grew up with his kids and spent a lot of time in that industry. And I found that it was just my knowledge, which was at the very beginning and the infancy of the industry, was sought after. And
What year was this?
89, 87, 80, 89, something like that. I
Late
was
80s.
just out of college. And so I started doing really well. I owned several publications myself, and was really on that path. I'll use you an example, the East Ranch magazine, which was a tremendous success. I got married on December 29th, 1990, and the day or two after I got married, the governor of the state of Rhode Island shut down all the banks in Rhode Island, if you remember the banking crisis.
I wasn't here then.
So the banking crisis, all of the credit unions and banks were over leveraged with bad loans, and the governor of Rhode Island came in and just shut down all the credit unions like overnight. So everybody's money was locked up. And I went from this thriving business that was basically supported with advertising to having advertisers that were phenomenal advertisers that just stopped. And the ones that were not great payers, or the ones that were always, they all wanted to advertise because they weren't being a strong arm for finances. So I got into, not to say financial trouble, but like I went from being, not worrying about what I was spending, and, 2 sports cars and a condo down in East Greenwich by 20 Water Street and all that, to kind of like suffering a little bit. And about the same time, I had my first baby on the way. So I had this lady that I used to sell advertising to in the real estate business. And I picked typical old blue-haired real estate agent, said, you've got this talent. You should sell real estate. And I'm like, I'm kind of on this path. She goes, when you sell a house, you get paid the next day. You're not waiting for receivables like you are right now. And so I got my license. Back then, it was an easier process. All you had to do was take the test. You weren't required to take 40 hours or, any of the the classes that you have to take now. I just bought the books, studied it, and passed the test. And, about 8 weeks later, I was getting my first check, and I'm like, oh, this is nice. I got paid for what I did yesterday. Wow. So that's how I really got into it, and I loved it. And I still stayed in my fingers in publishing for a while, but found that it was more of a distraction, and I was really doing well in the real estate end. So up until just very recently, I was still doing some publications because it's still in your blood, but I was a part owner of the first national, it was a coffee table magazine for the LBGQ community for wedding destinations. It was there's all kinds of wedding magazines, but there was I had a friend of mine from Martha's Vineyard who I'd worked with over in the past, who did the Bermuda wedding magazine, the Martha's Vineyard magazine, the Vineyard. It was basically destination wedding magazines. People buy them and decide where they're going to have their weddings and all that. And so she approached me. She needed funding for an idea that she had. She said, that's a huge community that doesn't have a magazine yet. And so we started this magazine. It was called EQL, and it was a very, very high-end publication that was for that community. It was really, almost like a town and country style. We had Gucci advertising and the Trump hotels and things like that, and some of these really high-end New York and New England wedding destinations that were seeking that clientele. And it was, I'm out of it now, but that was my last investment in the publishing industry. So that's kind of really how we got into real estate. It was the publishing thing kind of slid into it because one of my clients talked me into getting my real estate license. And 2 years later, I was a top agent in Rhode Island when I was 26.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you started your own. So
I was with this very small company for a very brief time, and I kind of outgrew it quickly, and I went to Remax.
Right.
And very close with the owner here in East Greenwich of the Remax franchise. But what happened was I was doing things as a young guy that the old style real estate was kind of a dying way. And I was, out in California, there were guys that were doing these teams and, all kinds of more dynamic things in the real estate industry. And I started bringing some of that into my business in Rhode Island, and quickly it took off. I had the first real estate web page in the state of Rhode Island.
Wow.
It was www.alangammons.com, and it was a page. And I used to do billboards that said, "Show your home to the world, www.alan." And everybody's like, "What's this WW crap?" So this is like 1994 or 5, and the internet was just starting out. And then the next, I can't even tell, I probably spent millions of dollars on websites and web pages. Oh, think about it, because 31 years of doing this, you're constantly, in order to be relevant, you're constantly spending money on that. And to be honest with you, I need to spend more. And the industry's changing now to social media and things like that. And a lot of it I've embraced, and a lot of it I'm utilizing. But now, as the old guy in the game, I'm seeing some of these younger guys doing very well on, taking the business in different ways. And I've always been really great with marketing, because, with the publishing and advertising background, I kind of brought that into my business. And
Why publishing? Why'd you get started in that?
So basically, we were just kind of talking about that. When I was at school, I learned the infancy of desktop publishing. There was no such thing before my generation. Everything was, if you were in publishing, you wrote something, you sent in the manuscript, and somebody sat down with this huge computer machine half the size of this room, and they did what they call compographic typesetting. And they would create boards that got shot with a camera, and then they'd transfer that to metal plates, and then they'd print them.
Uncle Jim's business.
Okay, so before that, they used to, in the old days, take the individual letters and put them into a tray and run ink over them, so that it kind of progressed. And then when the Mac computer came out, you could lay out whole magazines and newspapers online in hours, just pushing things around. It's a lot easier now than it was even then, but you could take the local East Greenwich Pendulum or a lot of these local periodicals that could, they would take all week to write them, typeset them. The article would have to be in by Monday for the paper to come out Friday. The local newspapers had full-time staffs that would just, like the Providence Journal and things like that. It was like huge machines. Huge amounts of people and manpower to create a newspaper. But that's what everybody read every day.
Every day.
Every day. And we used to get 2 a day. The Providence Journal used to come out in the morning and in the afternoon when I was a kid. I had the paper route, so I know. But
Me too.
Yeah. So the industry was changing around the time I was a sophomore in college, and I learned how to do it. My close friend growing up, his father owned this printing company that managed a lot of the periodicals, and I'm telling him about it. And he's got this, again, $150,000, $200,000 printing machine, compographic typesetting machine, that I told him was, I used the term of mooring because it weighs thousands of pounds. I said, it's going to be worth scrap metal, or someone's going to use it to tie a boat to it, to keep it in place. And that's what happened overnight. People literally had to throw those things away because there was no market for them. They just became obsolete. And so I started doing publications with him, and then I created a few new ones on my own, and I also bought a couple of smaller things I ran a publishing company for a couple of years. And even after I got in real estate, I was still doing publishing. But
how did you know that to learn those skills? Because were most people dismissive of the Mac, or everyone saw the potential?
Okay, so I'll put this into perspective of how fast things happened in my lifetime with the computers and things. When I was a freshman in high school, you would be in trouble if you used a calculator. By the time I was a junior, you were required to have a calculator. That's in 2 years. Okay. So the Apple II computer was probably coming about the time I started high school. And then they started integrating them into the high schools that had computer science programs, and East Greenwich was one of the first. And the teachers were learning as we were learning because it was that new. And there was the big 6-inch floppy disks, and we had to learn programming. And I remember my freshman year in college thinking, I'm never going to use this crap, you know what I mean? But I learned programming. And because I had a little bit of experience in East Greenwich High School with the Apple II, I bought a Mac when I was in college for like $1,000, which was a lot. And I was using it for school, but I was also learning, because of my friend's family that had the publishing company, how that could be. And I learned a lot very fast. And again, throughout the whole process was learning. Like I was talking about the teachers at the high school, they were literally learning that as we were learning it, because computers before that time were huge, clunky. You know, they had the IBM stuff that some of the insurance companies and things used just basically for data management. So it just evolved so very quickly in that period of time. And when I started the publishing company, I ended up hiring other people that did what I knew was coming better than I did, and I got into the marketing and sales side of it. So I did very little of the actual layout and data entry and things like that, because I was more building the company. And one of my first big clients was Blue Cross Blue Shield. They would have to do specialty publications. Like at the time, I was a runner, and the Rhode Island Marathon was sponsored by, the Ocean State Marathon was sponsored by Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they needed to have a flyer, like a program booklet. And I cut a contract with them. It's a funny story about this too. I cut a contract with them that I would give it to them. I'd produce it, print it, and give it to them, but all I wanted was the ad revenue. So I dealt with their an agency that wasn't Blue Cross Blue Shield, but it was an agency that was in charge of doing this. So they loved the idea that they weren't going to have to do anything. They were going to give me the content. I was selling advertising, and I would produce it, print it, and give it to them 5 days before the marathon. Well, one of the ads I sold was to the Foxy Lady, Providence. So when Blue Cross Blue Shield,
an enduring business that will stand the test of time.
right? So this is again 30 some years ago. When Blue Cross Blue Shield,
How do you know about the Foxy Lady?
We see it every time we drive home from.
So I had sold an ad to the Foxy Lady, and when Blue Cross Blue Shield's executives got a hold of the final proof of the magazine, which is already printed, they're like, "You're not putting this on the street with our name on it." So my contract was not with Blue Cross Blue Shield; it was with their marketing, the company that had been hired to do this. So there was this huge problem. Like, I didn't violate my contract. They technically did, but in their contract, they never said they had to approve advertisers that were going to be in it. So there's basically overnight. And if I didn't know the owner of the printing company very well, it would have been a
Disaster.
huge lawsuit. So we literally reprinted a magazine.
In one night.
And well, not one night, a couple of nights, but we got it there the ink was drying as the runners were picking them up in the morning of the race. That was a nightmare. So you're talking about trials and tribulations. Contracts after that. Again, it was an infancy of my company. My contract was with them, and they were thrilled to be able to get paid for something they weren't going to have to pay for. That was the marketing company,
Right.
And guy from the East Side walked in. I'm showing him what I can do, and he's like, "Well, can you give us a proposal?" I said, "Well, I want to. There's a whole parade route of people going to be lined up along this 26-mile race. I'm going to put some salespeople out there to sell advertising to all those businesses along that parade route," and I did. And it was, it's tremendous. I mean, it's profitable for me because I had my, I kept all ad revenue. I paid commissions to my salespeople, but and it was, but it almost could have been very bad.
What did the businesses that the salespeople approached and that you called, what was their initial reaction to the opportunity to advertise in the magazine? Did it make sense to them?
During the marathon.
It did, because the people were going to be registering, and the magazines were going to be, and there were about 80 pages, and there was all kinds of the history of the magazine, the previous winners, the scores, that sort of thing. And there was the obligatory Blue Cross information in there, information about the town and the history of the race and whatnot. So I gave the marketing company full reign on content. Just I was selling advertising. And when I sat down with the people who were selling advertising, who at the time were college students, Okay. And I hired college students for all my projects at that time, because if they sold an ad, the day they sold the ad, they got some of the money, whether I got paid or not. So if they went out and they sold a $200 ad, they might have got $20 that day. And if their commission was 25%, they'd get the balance of it when I got paid for the thing. So they'd come in at the end of the day. I'd meet them. We used to meet at a hotel, the Marriott Hotel in downtown Providence. They'd bring in their signed slips and the layout of the ad. It's all written on paper. And back then they'd give you a cut for the logos and things like that, and they'd scratch it out on paper, and then we bang it out on the Mac, and they'd have to take it back, get it signed off, and then it would be in the magazine. And then when they get paid the final payment, they'd get the balance of their payment. So these kids would come in every day, and some of them make $200 a day, and some of them make, you know what I mean? We're talking, back then it was
a lot of money. Yeah.
So I trained them in that particular case to explain to them that, all these people are going to be walking up and down this route, watching, cheering on their people. They're going to want to eat. They're going to want, they're not going to be, a lot of them aren't going to be from this area. There's shops, there's all this stuff. So I said, target businesses that, not insurance companies so much. Although some of them do that philanthropically to advertise and things like that. But I said, target the things that you think are going to be able to benefit from the, 30,000 people that are going to be lined up along this parade route. I call it a parade route, the race route. So
what towns was it in?
So back then, it started in Narragansett and ended in Providence. The routes, it used to start down in Narragansett and end in Providence. Yeah, it's changed. The routes changed a couple of times since then.
You knew your audience really well, and in my head, I'm thinking, because we're starting to sell advertising on this show, I'm starting to think about really defining what businesses need to reach the people that are going to watch this.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you another thing I did. Another one of the publications I did, and I didn't start this company. I did a lot of work for them. They did college telephone directories. So when we were in school, it was about 4 weeks after you were in school, you got your telephone number if you got a telephone, because back then it was just hardwired phones. So we'd go to the colleges and we'd say, we're going to give you 100 pages of content. We're going to go out all summer and we're going to sell advertising in the yellow page section to businesses that the kids are going to want to do business with. So the first school I worked with was Clark University in Worcester, and there's 11 or 12 colleges in Worcester, and I think when we were all done, we had 9 of them. So we'd go to them and say, we're going to give you this directory that's going to be delivered to these students 4 weeks after they get into school, because they'll have the last thing we're going to print is the student telephone numbers, okay? But we'd go out all summer long, and I'd hire the kids from that college, and I would trade with a hotel in Worcester for hotel rooms, because obviously their parents are going to need hotels, and that's an advertiser that wants to get in front of the colleges. And I'd send them out, and I say, go to the places you go. You go. This is a junior at Clark University. Where do you get your dry cleaning done? What bars do you go to? What pool halls? Storage units, everything. And again, same thing. They get paid every day when they come back to the hotel. I would work out trades, so these kids ate for free. We'd go to restaurants and whatever it was. So and again, we kept all of the ad revenue, and the college ended up we'd give them 100 pages. They could put the course directory, they could put the school maps, they can put profiles of the teachers, they can put anything they wanted in the 100 pages. We didn't care. So there would be 3 sections: the college part, the white pages of the students, and the yellow pages. So the guy that was doing this. This first college, I got him to expand it just in Worcester to 8 or 9 colleges. And the second year or third year, when we had all these colleges, I went to the Domino's pizza guy that owned all the Domino's. In fact, an offshoot of it was who brought it to Rhode Island. The guy named Jim Party, who lives in Warwick, was a big part of that group back then. And they bought the back page of every college directory and every student dorm room in the College of Boston. I'm sorry, the Worcester. And that one ad paid for our printing for the whole thing. Wow. Because think about it. This magazine, this Domino's pizza ad was in the dorm room of every kid in those 8 colleges. It might have been 9. I can't remember. We're going back some time now. But it was, when you're targeting for advertising for this, you think, okay, who would benefit from this, and what genre, whether it's you'd have to think about, your business better than I do. But when you're a college student, and you're going to be looking at a directory, who do you go to find out what should be in there? You go to, they thought of things I didn't think of.
Of course.
Like, today it would be different things like,
broken phone faces needing a.
Yeah, that'd be a big one. That'd be a big one.
Planned Parenthood. But the things that I didn't think of, like they all had storage in the off season. They'd store so they'd go to all the storage places, and then they'd go to all the inns and hotels for Parents Weekend. So you have, Parents Weekend. This is the places to go for Parents Weekend. So it worked out really well. So we're totally off track of real estate, but that's kind of how I got into. Into real estate was by accident while I was doing the publishing business.
But why were you, sorry, and then what made you entrepreneurial in the first place? Was this something you were born with? Was that the environment you were raised in?
I came from a great family, my father's family my father's family was very wealthy, and my father's father kind of took it down a notch. So my father was very conservative, wanted us to learn the value of money that I think his father didn't have.
In what sense? He was too risky?
I think that he just coasted with things because his father was wealthy, his grandfather was wealthy, and my father, I think my father's young adult life was tough because my grandfather was alcoholic and had kind of just rested on the laurels of his parents. I loved my grandfather very much. I didn't really know him when he was in the throes of that issue, but it obviously changed the lives of his family quite a bit. So I had a paper route. Then I was, dishwasher when I was 13, and I became a coal hogger in East Greenwich here when I was a kid. That's how I paid for college. I was literally had paid for a brand new car and was paying for college on my own when I was because I was coal hogging. I was making $100 a day when my friends were making $335 an hour. So that's I had a kind of a bug, not necessarily hungry for money. But I think once you start getting a taste of money as a kid, if it's on your own, you kind of go, I still think that I'm entrepreneurial in the sense I'm always thinking, what else can I do next?
Yeah.
Even though I don't need to, or it's in my blood, I've owned restaurants, I've owned, a marina, I've invested in other businesses because I've always looked for things that I could have income from that I don't have to be involved with on a daily basis. And some of that has been great and some of it's been horrible. But I think it's just been entrepreneurial. I'm one of those people that...
You ever consider comedy as a profession?
I've never considered it as a profession, but it is part of my life.
I remember when we first met you, the conversation was great. You were very funny. We were having a great time. So I was just curious. Did you ever do stuff at your restaurants or something?
Well, I never ran the restaurant, so I invested in it. The first one was a college bar in Providence. I had a very good friend who had a very high-end Italian restaurant, and the chef was somebody that he kind of put in business. And my friend that owned the restaurant was not in the restaurant business either. And after a short period of time, he found out the partner was stealing him blind. And so he kicked him out, and now he's got this beautiful built-out restaurant in downtown Providence near Johnson and Wales that he wanted me to sell as a real estate agent. So I looked at the project, and I started marketing a little bit, and I realized that the city of Providence had taken the area where this restaurant was, and they had named it this new arts district. And I found out the building my restaurant was in, or his restaurant was in, was slated to be torn down to build a parking garage. So it was very difficult to sell a restaurant in a building that's eventually going to be torn down. So I gave him some money to take this fine dining restaurant and turn it into a college bar. It was called Dr. Feelgoods, and we had a music venue in the back, pool tables in the front, and every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, it was chaos, and it was very successful. But with that, I wasn't there pouring drinks or opening the door or any of that. I was just the investor, but I got too involved, and I had a young family at the time. I think my kids were like 2 and 3, my oldest, and that's not a good business to be in as a young father, So like I said, I wasn't running it. and McKinley's here in East Greenwich. I was one of the original owners of that. I don't know if you've been to McKinley's down at Norton Shipyard, the waterfront restaurant down there.
No.
It's kind of near the East Greenwich Yacht Club. It's a pub. But,
I've seen it. I've seen it.
So the guys that started that needed some help, and so I got involved in that, and they bought me out after about 8 years. So I've been in those. Like I said, you're always kind of thinking. But there, if you're on a track, and let's say you decide you're going to, get into media. There are things that'll.
I'm in it. I can't escape it.
Yeah.
I got sucked into it. Go ahead.
They'll derail you. I got into day trading in the late 90s, and I'd spend 6-7 hours sometimes, and my tax return to be this thick. And I realized that, okay, maybe I made a couple $100,000, but how much did it cost me? It's an opportunity cost,
Just to sit at and look at prices all day.
Did you like doing that?
I loved the excitement of somewhat gambling a little bit,
Right.
And I did well. I mean,
Did you beat the market?
I beat the market, yeah. But I had certain sectors that, and some of them I was in and out of them multiple times a day.
Right.
But when you're a real estate agent and a successful real estate agent, and you're taking your focus off of that to make $200, $400, $1,000 on the, it just was counterproductive. So I had to literally, like, overnight giving up gambling. I gave up day trading, and because it was after 2 years of that being part of my life, I realized that it was counterproductive, even though I never lost significant amount of money on any trade, and I was ratcheting up the holdings, that if I had spent my time putting that effort into what I was already successful at, I think that it would have been in the long run much better.
So how do you recharge yourself?
You're too close.
Because one could look at that as, yeah, okay, I'm really good at real estate, and I gotta do something else.
So technically, I don't think I'm any better at real estate than a lot of people.
Interesting.
I think I'm actually
What are you better at?
probably marketing, and I'm very great about relationships. I'm not a money counter. Like, if you ask me within $100,000 of where I am for the year, I couldn't tell you. For most of my career, it's been that way because I've made more than I need to live. And, you move on. I've had some tough years too, like I think anybody in any business, and I think I'm one of those fortunate people that goes to work every day and it's not work. I do get a lot of stress sometimes. And there's been times where, stress can, cause you to gain weight, cause you to not eat right, cause you to not sleep. But it's not because I don't like what I was doing. You take on other people's problems, especially when you have people who are in financial trouble or going through divorces and things like that. A lot of times you take it on, and not that you're taking the whole thing on, but you run your business and you run your day-to-day interactions with them, keeping that in mind. This weekend I was at a house in East Greenwich, a family that I've known my whole life. The parents are both in the nursing home, and they had to clear the house out, and the daughters, one's in New York, they're overwhelmed. So I said, I'll take care of it. Don't need to do that in my business, but that's the kind of thing that sometimes you do. You take it on. So you say, how do I recharge? It's not a drain for me. I mean, I do love to travel. I do love to do things with my family. I've always been a boater and a skier, that sort of thing. So it's easier for me when I'm doing things like that to shut the phone off and not think about it till 4:30. Because like I said, if I'm sitting at home on the couch on a Sunday morning and I really don't have anything going on, and I don't have a honey-do list from the wife, I'll get up and go to the office, and sometimes my office is Felicia's, sometimes my office is the gym. Not enough, but I can do work. I mean, my car, I put a lot of miles on. I've probably put between two cars 40, 50,000 miles a year because I'm in a car all day long, and in the real estate business, we're independent contractors of the brokerage that you work for. So I have a business within a business. So when I owned Gammons Real Estate, I had Gammons Investments was how I paid myself from Gammons Realty. So Gammons Realty would pay Gammons Investments, whatever my commission dollars were. And then I would pay my advertising, my health insurance, my car payments, my cell phones, all that stuff. So the ultimate goal was for that Gammons Investments income to flow, because whatever fell out of the bottom of that at the end of the year flows to my personal income. So you have your corporate taxes and corporate income, and then whatever you pay yourself out of that. So there was all kinds of things that, if you get a great accountant, can help you to reduce your tax liability. You know, most of the wealthiest guys I know don't pay taxes. You know, and
How do they do that?
well, I mean, you watch guys like Kiyosaki or Donald Trump even about how, you know, that people make fun of them for not paying taxes, but they're not doing anything illegal.
One of the funniest lines is Hillary says to Donald Trump, "You don't pay any taxes." He lets her finish. She's going on. And then he just looks at her and says, "Well, it's your buddies that created the laws, so I don't have to pay any taxes."
Well, you know, in reality, he says he's not paying any taxes, but we all, even if you're not paying income taxes, think of the dollars and the things that create taxes that he's responsible for.
Absolutely.
You know,
And you buy the car, you pay sales tax on the car,
pay sales tax on the car.
and the salesman pays tax on his commission,
And that salesman's able to go out and buy food for his family that he pays taxes on. And
It all boils over.
Actually, I think it was a very smart move. I think it revitalized the auto industry a little bit. And, you know, I would tell people that I do this. You mean you wrote off the whole car in 1 year?
Right.
And I said, yeah. In fact, funny story, I used to have a pickup truck, a car, and a sports car. Pickup truck I do a lot of flips and rehabs and things like that.
Oh, you do. So you're an investor too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I
always had a pickup truck, always. And so the only time I've been audited twice, and the only thing that the federal government ever got me for when caught me with, or problem.
They got you.
They got me. So I spent more money on my accountant than they got, but I had a GMC pickup truck that I never drove it. The guys would go get plywood, or, you know, I almost never drove it. If I put 1,000 miles on it myself a year, it was a company vehicle. So the East Greenwich Rotary was having a election day breakfast, and a real estate agent from town, named Vinny Mayola, asked me if he could borrow my pickup truck to move tables. So I'm like, sure, take it. That's exactly why I don't own a pickup truck anymore, because everybody was always borrowing it. You know, now I borrow other people's pickup trucks.
Smart. We do the same thing.
I've had 3 pickup trucks totaled by other people in my career. 3. One is Nate the Barber on Main Street, East Greenwich. You know Nate the Barber?
I know the sign.
So Nate the Barber borrowed it one time because his vehicle was down to go pick up his son, and he needed something to put a car seat in. And he was driving down West Shore Road and somebody hit him. That was one. Another one was a young man was working for me doing one of the rehabs, and he got into an accident. But the funny one was the story I was telling you about with
Vinny.
Vinny. Do you know Vinny?
No.
Vinny used to live, believe it or not, on that house, that blue house on the corner.
Oh.
That was Vinny's house.
Oh, so then we do know Vinny.
No, he lived there years before you were born. Before you were born.
Thinking the previous owner's name definitely wasn't Vinny. But
So Vinny borrows it for the election day breakfast in the town of East Greenwich, and he gets rear-ended by a garbage truck and totals my pickup truck. I don't get upset about things like that. Big deal. You go get another truck. But my accountant not only had fully depreciated the truck, he took the loss. So you can't take a loss on a. So you understand when you lose something or something gets stolen, you can. So yeah, he fully depreciated it and also took the so they had some recapture tax on that. So that's my tax story with the IRS. I spent more money on the accountant than they got about the pickup truck. Yeah. So
were you freaked out when you found out you were getting audited?
That's one of the stress points that, like, I mean, literally, because you never know. And by the way, I never met with the IRS. I just told my accountant, handle it. I didn't cheat. So like I had a very expensive sport fish boat that a lot of guys in my industry or other industries will use it. Oh, for we took our clients fishing, you know, and they write off the fuel, write off the dockage and all that. I never did anything like that. I never once spent took any of my business dollars and put it into my boat. You know, I have an attorney friend from town here. The boat is 100% business owned. He uses it to entertain clients, and you know, he'd have to, if he ever got audited, that's a very hard thing to prove. Yo, you never took your family out on Sunday for, you know, picnic. So I just,
you have to prove that you never did that.
well, if he wrote it off 100%.
Oh, you could just write it off a little bit.
Right. So some people own a car and they use it 25% for business. So their accountants will they'll write off 25%.
That's reasonable.
And they do it in their homes too. Like if your father had a home here, an office here, they might take part of the taxes and part of the electric and all that and write it off against his business. So where was I going with that?
Gotta love Uncle Sam's rules.
Uncle Sam. So I spend, you know, anyone that's in a business and making money spends an awful lot of time tax planning and thinking about things. Like, you know, right now it's the end of the year. So you're trying to think of what can I pay now to reduce my 2023 corporate income taxes. So you're paying, you know, any legal bills you have or any, you know,
Real estate taxes.
anything. Well, real estate taxes, I don't think you can prepay real estate taxes, but like I think do things like I have an account. What do they call it? A HSA, health savings account. So,
Yeah.
So businesses, you pay for your health insurance and you have deductibles and things that aren't covered with your health insurance. As a business owner, you can open up what they call an HSA for you and your employees, and you put certain dollars into that are pre-tax dollars. So it's a way of saving money for health issues. And then when you retire, if there's money in that account, you can pull it out at that tax level. So it's like,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So you can put in $8,500 a year. I think that's the level now. And if you don't use $8,500 for your deductibles and doctor visits that aren't covered by your health insurance, it accrues. And then at certain points, when you retire, that money's sitting in an account. They don't just take it. You can start drawing it out, using it for healthcare or anything. But if you take it out for other than healthcare, you pay taxes on that money because you didn't pay taxes on it when you earned it at the level that, when you're retired, your tax levels are completely different.
So switching gears, tell me, what was your most fun business you ever owned, invested in, or was a part of?
The most successful, the most fun?
Most fun.
Okay. When I was 17 years old, I started a cookie witch cart, which was a freezer on wheels. It looked like a cart you'd find like in one of those like a fruit cart you'd find in a fruit, big wheels, wooden wheels, had a freezer in it. And I would buy these unbelievable cookies from the Providence Cookie Company in downtown Providence. And I would go to Warwick Ice Cream and buy sliced pies of ice cream, and we'd make these cookie witches. And I would go to fairs and parades and things like that. And I'd hire the two hottest girls I could find to work it. And I'd sit back and, watch, everybody come buy the cookies. And it was a lot of fun. You made money, but it wasn't, but that was a good time in my life. Yeah. Met a lot of people. Not too many 17-year-olds had a portable business,
What's nice about that is you didn't have to contend with the health. Did you have to contend with the health department?
We did.
Oh, you did?
So we had to have, one of the reasons why I didn't actually manufacture them myself, because I would have had to have
a million things.
Right. So what I did was I'd buy the cookies from the Providence Cookie Company, which was in the arcade. You remember them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd order, 400 chocolate chip cookies, and then I'd have them taken to the Warwick ice cream plant on Route 2 in Warwick. And because they had the clean environment, I'd have them put together and put in wax bags there and transported in freezers to a freezer at my parents' basement, until they had to come out to go be sold. So I did have to have the cart certified by the health department. I had to have all the sales licenses. And do you know where the plaza is in East Greenwich? used to be Benny's Plaza. What do they call it now? It's where Sienna is.
Oh yeah, no, we know it. Yes.
Yeah.
So in the summertime, there was a restaurant there called Ashley's and a bunch of other. There was a grocery store and all that back then. Benny's was in there for a while. I'd have these high school girls work there. It was a cart by the side of the road, like a hot dog stand. So when it wasn't at a fair or at a parade or whatever it was, we had it there.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay, so there must have been. It's like the Dell's truck at Home Depot now.
exactly.
So you were forced, well, not forced, but you were incentivized to go into real estate by the need for an immediate source of income.
Nope.
Towards the end of the.
So it wasn't that I needed it. I mean, my income was way down because of what was happening with the publishing industry, and there was this. My mom at the time used to handle my books for me. She goes, "You know how many of these people owe you money?" She'd say, "This restaurant keeps giving you gift certificates. You can't pay your car insurance with gift certificates." You know, and that was the time everybody was struggling. You know, and so I sell this. I get my license. I sell a house. It was like $89,900 or something like that, and my commission might have been $2,500. But I got the check that day, and I'm like, "This is nice." You know, I'm not waiting to get paid, and you know, I had at that time a baby. You know, I was pretty young. My wife was 20 and I was 23 or something like that. And it just kind of snowballed from there. So I literally stayed kind of in both industries for a while, and then the real estate just took over.
Why?
Because I got really pretty good at it. And I was second year I was in the business. I was a top agent in Rhode Island.
Wow. And you were top 100 in the country at one point, right?
I was. In the mid 2000s was really, I mean, I was selling almost a house a day.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, you know, so I'm selling a fraction of the number of houses, you know, dollar volume's way up because obviously the houses we're selling are much more expensive. But, you know, when I did a lot of new construction, and, you know, new construction raised ranches were 119,000. I'm selling them now for 550. So you do the math, it's a big difference. And,
yeah, we'll talk about the real estate market in a
you know, so it's a totally different world. I'm working, similarly, it's hard, but there's also more real estate agents than there are houses being sold in the state of Rhode Island. So there's a lot of people selling 1 or 2 or 5 houses that are never making a living at it.
Right.
And I think, in my opinion, a lot of them are going to disappear now because
With this
round. It's happened before, you know, and I've been through several cycles, you know, where, you know, there's a couple times, you know, where I thought I wasn't going to make it through because I had owning my own business. I had 7 offices, 7 copiers, 7 receptionists, health insurance, all these things that were just, when the market went down, like in 2008, it was horrible.
Yeah.
You know, I imploded. I went from 7 offices down to 4. And I closed my most productive office down because it was the most productive office, but it was my least profitable office because the agents that were in that office were very, very high commission splits and things like that. And the agents that were in that office that weren't on high splits, the ones that I could have made money on, weren't selling anything. So it was, in fact, Paul Zarella, Jerry's son, was managing that office for me, and we're still very close friends. And when I closed that office, he was the manager. He started his own company called Williams and Stewart, which is still out there today because their office was in Cranston. And the top 3 or 4 agents in that office were on such high splits, I didn't really make any money on them. But it was a very high cost location. I didn't own the building. I had, you know, manager there. I had a receptionist there. I had, you know, copier leases and all that. So when I shut that office down, even though my gross sales went down, my company became more profitable.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what's a high split? What's a normal split?
Real estate agents get paid obviously a percentage of the commission that they earn. So if it's a 3% or a 6% commission, depending on their level of experience and what they negotiate with their broker, they can make either half of it up to, some people make as much as 90% of it.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah. So depending on, you know.
And that's a deal you make with your broker.
With your broker, right. So it's every real estate agent's an independent contractor. And then you start talking about teams, like my team gets paid by me. So if I have 5 agents working on my team, the gross commissions come into me and they're on a split with me. And the company has no say over what I'm paying them, or every team works differently. Everybody's got a different way they run it, you know, so there is no normal with that. But when I first got in the business, there was no such thing as a team. But again, there was no such thing as websites. There was web page. There's, it's changed. We used to walk around with these fat real estate books with every, and they were
MLS books.
MLS books. And by the way, by the time they were printed, half the time the houses were sold, But that was the only way.
You were the president of the MLS. Right?
I was at one point, yes, yeah. I was involved. I was president of MLS, I think, for 2 or 3 years back, in the 2000s.
What does that entail? Just curious.
So most real estate agents, especially the ones that are really 100% involved, get involved with the Board of Realtors and the National Association of Realtors, or the MLS in Rhode Island is unique because we're such a small state. We only have one MLS. You go to Massachusetts, there's 4 or 5, and those are separate corporations. But this particular MLS in Rhode Island was owned by the Rhode Island Association of Realtors. So there was a president of the Rhode Island Association of Realtors and a president of the MLS, and they operated separately. But the MLS was a subsidiary, if you will, of the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, and there was a group of realtors that competitors or friends in the industry that we kind of climbed up through the ranks of the Rhode Island Association of Realtors and MLS at the same time. And I was fortunate to be president of MLS at a time when one of my closest friends in the industry was president of Rhode Island Association of Realtors. So we got a lot done. Huh. If you're ever sat on a board, sometimes it can be a disaster because you got 2 or 3 people that do everything. And then you've got the guy sitting at the end of the table who does nothing, that, excuse the expression, cockblocks everything that's productive. So I was able to serve at a time when it was very productive because the people were working cohesively. And when I got out and I was done as president, I never looked back. I felt I'd done my part. I try to contribute where I can, but it takes a lot out of my business. So Ron Phipps, who's a very successful realtor from the East Greenwich market, was actually the president of the National Association of Realtors. And I watched how it impacted his business. I'm sure it had some very positive things, because you can go into someone's house and say, I was president of the National Association of Realtors, but the amount of time that this man dedicated to the industry, pat him on the back, but I'm sure it cost him significantly on the financial aspect, especially during the time he was doing it, because he was always on a plane going to national meetings and things like that.
How'd you get your first listing for the 89.9?
His mother.
No, actually not. I was working at an open house for that older woman I was telling you about, and I met this young family, and they wanted to move from Warwick to North Kingstown. And the funny thing is, it's not really that funny. It's just one of those things, and it's part of, you say, why are you successful? How did you build your business? It was on a small street in Warwick. I remember the street, I remember the house, I remember the price. So I sold it very quickly, and they were talking very positively about me to their next door neighbor. So my second listing was that house next door. And from that second house, in fact, I was communicating with the woman who I sold that second house for today on Facebook I posted something about cookies. I don't know if you saw it. And
Seems like cookies are a constant theme in your life, Alan.
Food, yeah. So I made a little funny thing on Facebook about, everybody saying that they're the best cook, so why don't you drop off and I'll be the judge, that kind of thing. So this woman that I sold the second house for in my career, her name was Marion Griffin. Single mom with 2 daughters. They were like 10 and 12. Divorcee. She met a man, and she was going to sell her house, and they were going to buy a house together. So my second and third sale were her house that I sold and the house that they bought together. From that relationship, if I haven't sold 25 houses or more, I've sold them at least 3 or 4 houses. I've sold his ex-wife's house. I've sold her daughter a house. I've sold houses for her sisters. It's just like they wouldn't think of buying or selling a house without, or if they know somebody, you got to call Alan. This is the second house I ever sold.
Why? A huge testament to you.
Right, that you do a good job. So why?
Because most people that I know don't use the same realtor.
So I'm not saying that every person that I've ever sold a house for or to is that I have a good relationship with afterwards, because you can't keep everybody happy.
No.
But getting back to the money thing, it's not as important to me as walking away from that transaction with those people as a friend, or at least somebody that I know can't say, oh, Alan, you're never going to hear somebody say I screwed him. You know what I'm saying? It's just never going to happen. I don't want to say I'm fortunate. I get business all the time from people who like, my realtor did this, my realtor did that, you know, and you don't want, I mean, I don't care what business you're in, cars, you know, media, whatever it is. If you get a reputation for,
Screwing people?
it doesn't even have to be screwing, just not doing things the right way all the time.
Or just making everything you do an issue, a problem. It doesn't go smoothly. You don't follow up. It's exhausting. It's just not the way it needs to be. We had a house in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, while we were living in Manhattan. And the closing, I really wanted, so these people were the fourth people to see the house. And we went to the closing. He is 11. He drove with them. I don't even know these people. He drove with them. And when the closing ended, we all got up and we hugged and kissed. I mean, like, it was crazy. So much so that the attorney that was there, he said, are these your relatives? I mean, do you know these people? I said, no, not at all. And he said, this is what every closing should be like. He said, in all my years of doing this, I've never seen such genuine affection, even after you did all the negotiations and you were, because
You must have sold it to them for too little.
No, it's not that at all. Honestly, you'll see people that'll do whatever I tell them to do, no matter what. They don't question it. They don't question it. And at the end, they're like, oh, we're so glad we listened to you. And then there's the people that question everything you do. Every step. And they still at the end, you know, sometimes I'm going to tell them what I think, whether they like it or not. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to tell you when I come in your house, you've got to, you know, this is going to be problematic. Let's change this. You know, the people that say what people want to hear all the time are going to be apologizing later when they can't perform. If you come in and say, oh, this is the best, this is great, I'm sure I can get you $1.9 million for this house, right? And then 3 months later, the house is sitting there, no one's looking at it, and the green carpet's still there, the shag carpet from 1977, you know, and the ficus trees that have dust all over them and all that. I go in and I say, look, I'm going to say that I'm comfortable. I've been called the vine Nazi because I hate vines anywhere. You go into a house it's got fake vines. Oh, people remember in the 90s, we put the fake vines over the kitchen cabinets, and the vine borders, they're made out of paper. And excuse me, get rid of that shit. They call me the vine.
Here's your title.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then how about the stupid fake ficus trees? I mean, you probably have one. I mean, everybody had them. You go to like, you know what I'm talking about, right? The fake, they sit in one of their fake trees. And
I never did fake. I had the real ones.
Yeah. Well, they have fake, you know, you go through the most expensive houses in East Greenwich, they have fake ficus trees. So yeah, I'll come in, I'll tell them what they want to hear. And by the way, I'd rather not list a house than have, you know, I've done it where I've said, I know I shouldn't do this. And at the end, they're not happy because you didn't perform it. It's because you didn't do what you thought you should do from the very beginning. You know, you're not perfect. I could underprice or overprice a house, but sometimes you just know. And one of the problems I've had over the years is with friends and family, because it's very, very difficult for you to say no to friends and family about things, you know? And as much as sometimes people say, oh, my sister didn't list her house with my husband, or, you know, she went to her friend instead, you know, she went to somebody else. And when I sold my last house, I didn't show it myself. I wanted someone else from my office to show it. And it was because when you're selling your own house, you tend to oversell or undersell. Oh, this is a $12,000 tile job, or I'm sorry about the crack in that room. I was going to fix that. Right. You know, it's difficult. I mean, when you're listing a house for a friend or a family member, you sometimes sugarcoat things that you shouldn't be sugarcoating, because you're taking away that professionalism and stepping into a different shoe. and that's one of the struggles I've had my whole career is I try to keep everybody happy. And sometimes you stray from your principles, not necessarily ethical principles, but the things that I think should be done to get a house ready, or things the price wise, you'll bend the rules a little bit when it's a family friend or family member. And more recently, I've had the problem with parents of friends I grew up with here in this town. They're all aging out of their houses,
right?
And they read what their knowledge of real estate was when they paid $66,000 for that 4,000 square foot house, and they see things in the paper and they know more about it than I do. And it's difficult for me to say to 82-year-old Mr. Smith, who I've known my whole life, that he's wrong,
And you still call him Mr. Smith?
So funny. I do have a lot of these parents say, call me Esta, call me this, call me that. And I have a hard time with it. I say, my mother, my canned response is, my mother won't let me. So your mother should be proud, you have, don't call me Mr. This, call me Dick,
Right.
And, my mom won't let me, So.
Oh my goodness.
So you started at Remax?
Nope.
Right?
I started a little tiny real estate company called Homestead Properties.
Before Remax?
Before Remax. I was there a very short period of time. And I still, the woman she's retired, she's in her late 80s, lives in North Carolina, and she's, very, very sweet. She's always telling people she created me, which she talked me into it, so I give her a lot of credit for that. But there, about 6-7 months into the industry, I was taking off, and she was running this little tiny boutique. Everything was handwritten. I mean, a fax machine was a struggle, and I was ready to take off. And so it was very hard for me to leave her, but I went to Remax, and David Anicelli, they had a jacket and tie policy back then if you wanted to go work at Remax. And I'm like, I can't come here because I'm never going to wear a jacket to work. I'm just not that kind of guy. If somebody's got to die or, funeral, for me to wear a tie or in a jacket. And they actually changed the policy for me because they wanted me.
Right.
I had to dress professionally, and, even back then jeans were unacceptable. It was, but I was a jeans and boat shoes and, pressed polo shirt or something like that. And, people to this day will come up to me and say, you're the one that got rid of the jackets. I mean, if you see somebody dressed with a jacket like this today, it's very rare in my industry. Everybody's, not that they're not dressed well, they're just casual, and I think that's because I'm more comfortable that way, and I think if I'm more comfortable,
They're probably more comfortable.
and the people I'm dealing with are more comfortable.
It's whatever you project.
Exactly. So I'll mention Ron Phipps again. Good friend, mentor in a lot of ways. He's been in the business maybe 10 years longer than I was. He said to me one time, I remember when I was a young guy, now you're the young guy. Well, now I'm not the young guy. It's like we kind of grew up that way. And there's been times where he's referred business to me and I referred business to him. And I've said, if I'm talking to a client and I know he's my competitor for the listing, they're either going to love him or they're going to love me. Two totally different guys, two totally different approaches to the business, both very successful. But if you're gravitating towards his personality, you're not it's not even a gray area. I can almost tell when I leave that table who's going to get the listing because of personality.
Of the seller.
No, the seller's personality and how it is.
No. You can almost tell, given your interaction with the seller, whether they're going to like your personality or
Ron's,
his personality.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. And nobody's doing it right or wrong.
No,
It's just different.
So let me ask you, when you're managing your people, and I always ascribe to this philosophy because when I was a week into my profession, I was so raw. I was in New Jersey, and one of the largest brokers, financial planners, put his arm around me and said, Billy, you got to act like you never need business. And 2, don't do business with people who you don't like or don't like you. There are all kinds of personalities out there. Let yourself go, and just because the ones that don't like you are going to be a pain in the butt.
Right.
And I don't know, my whole life, I've just stuck to those two things. But it's very difficult to pass that down to people. They think, oh my God, if I don't get this, there's no way I can have 5 times that, because I'm not spending all my time servicing this person that isn't a fit with me. So I agree with you.
100%.
100%.
You know, and you're talking about how you mentor people in my industry. I love to tell an agent,
Never mind.
especially a raw agent, you've got an opportunity for a listing that you don't think you can get because it's too big a listing. It's in a market you don't know. Bring me along. I'll do it. I'll do what I can to get you the listing, and it's still your listing. Let me just, because I thrive on that. And I said, and I mean this, if I took you on a listing appointment today, your first listing appointment to list a house, I'd learn something from you. I might pick up some little thing you said or some little way you presented something that I'll learn something from. I said, because nobody does it the right way. There is no right way. My presentations are very, very informal. They're very, they're conversational, as opposed to, a lot of sales training is constantly showing things. Mine's very conversational. Okay. And you might say something, just a little something that I might use again. And I tell them, listen to what I say. And what I say might not work for you, but you might pick up something that I'm saying that 2 years from now, when you're in a house in Barrington on the water, you might say something that I just said now. So you're constantly learning and you're constantly adapting. And especially in any sales situation, you're adapting to the personality of the people you're with. And, with couples, within 4 seconds who the person that you need to be talking to is. You cannot disregard the other one, but you already know within seconds who you're interviewing or who's interviewing you. And that's something you'll learn. It's just from, doing it time and time and time again. And, there is ways that I do things, and sometimes I'll get into a house and I'll skip over everything because they already know they want to list the house with me, and I don't have to do a lot of the things. And
right.
And the hardest thing for someone who's taught a sales process is to change their process in midstream, because they don't need to do certain things, and overdoing things sometimes is bad. It's like some people need data, some people need inspiration. Some people need
every step. Some people need no steps.
Exactly. And part of being successful at any type of sales, I think, is knowing when to step back and let them talk, or put the pen in the hand type of thing. It's I think you either know it instinctively after a certain period of time, or I can tell you when I meet. I've one of my most successful stories about recruiting a real estate agent. He's one of our top agents in East Greenwich right now, and he again no longer works for me, but he was a waiter at a restaurant in East Greenwich called Paragon, Paragon was where the Neon station is now, and then it was 1149. Paul Zarella and I used to go to lunch a lot. I was running my North Kingstown office, and he was running my office on Main Street in East Greenwich. So we'd meet for lunch a lot at Paragon, because there wasn't a lot of great places to go to lunch. And we'd had this waiter, and he was funny, and he moved to Rhode Island because his wife took a job in Rhode Island, and he wasn't here to be a waiter, but you could tell he had something. And he had a personality. He was living on the hill in East Greenwich, didn't know what the next step in his life was going to be. So Paul and I said, you got to become a realtor. You've got to, if you can be a good waiter or a good bartender, you can sell, whether it's cars or boats or trains, whatever it is. So this guy's name is Dean Benjamin. Ever heard the name Dean Benjamin? If you look him up, he's probably one of the top 4 or 5 realtors in East Greenwich. And I don't want to say I created him, but we got him into the business. And we talked about, what am I going to do because I'm not from here. You grew up here. You went to junior high school and went to the prom with this one and that, you got the parents. And I said, where do you live? He says, I live on the hill in Harbor. I knew he had a golden retriever, and he walked the golden retriever all the time. I said, that's your market. Start there, build there, know your neighbors, let them know you're a real estate agent, and he has done so well. He's maybe a little younger than I am. He's got a daughter who I think is still in high school. And over the last 15 years, he's made a tremendous career out of it. But we recruited him from Paragon Restaurant.
How can you see that in people beyond just the personality? Is there something deeper than that you look for, that you see?
Is it just a feeling?
It's a feeling. And I have people, people come and go, especially in the last 8 or 10 years, people, I'm going to become a realtor. I'm going to become a realtor. I'm going to become a realtor. And they just think you throw a sign in the yard,
It's not that easy.
You leverage your assets. My children are my number one source of business in my career. Without hands down. Think about this. I've met through Happy Hearts Nursery School on Route 2. All 4 of my kids went there. I've met parents, painting pumpkins, and I was on the soccer field and lacrosse field and baseball field. That my kids' friends and their parents became my peer group for a long time. And, you become friendly with people, they want to do business with you. And then those relationships, there are people that I met when my kids were at Happy Hearts 25 years ago that I've sold half a dozen properties to. And the success of any person that's in any business is the repeat business. You can always be a one-hit wonder. I had a mortgage company for a number of years, and my partner was a CPA, and we no longer talk. In fact, he had to buy me out because we went to a point where I said, either buy me out or I'm buying you out, because his philosophy was make as much money as you can on every deal. Where mine was build a relationship with these people and you'll do deal after deal after deal. And, I'm not a screamer or a yeller. If you've seen me screaming, it's because I'm at the end of my rope, and it's, he and I would have drag out screaming matches. I get phone calls from my clients that I gave him saying, this wasn't what it was supposed to be. And, I don't do business that way, and so, but if he was making 8,000 instead of 3,000 on a loan, he was happy knowing he's never going to see those people again. And, I won't mention the name. It was a horrible, made a lot of money for a while, but I said, this can't be part of my future, because those people, if somebody doesn't do business with you, they don't tell you why, they just go somewhere else, and you may never hear about why. Part of the reason why I don't get political in any of my, I may have opinions, and I may, with close personal friends, we'll talk politics a little bit, but if I started talking about politics here with you two, and we didn't 100%, and you might be angry with something I said, and you go list your house with somebody else, and I never know why.
Right.
You're going to piss off 50% of the people when you start to talk about certain things, and I just avoid it. I can't put yard signs in my yard. I can't, I might write a check, for a friend, for a political campaign, but I cannot wear it on my vest.
Right.
Because it's suicide for a business person who, and again, it's the business you don't know you're not getting, or why, somebody went somewhere else because I, supported
X, Y, and Z.
Exactly. And so you walk that line. You can't keep everybody happy, but there's certain things that you can do to protect yourself from making people unhappy that really it's.
You mentioned earlier you always go above, well, not always, but that you will go above and beyond. The example you gave was helping the friends of yours who's relocating, who are in New York. Mm. Other than that, what do you think are your strengths that set you apart from everyone else? Because there's got to be some reason why you were the number one in Rhode Island and one of the top 100. Do you know what your place was in the country?
I think it was 77. I was 77 for dollars and like 60 something for numbers of houses or something like that. A couple of years in that range. It was 2 or 3 years I was there.
And that's got to be out of millions of realtors.
Hundreds of thousands. Yeah. Probably millions now. But Now teams have taken over. Like I have a very small team, but like there's the number one producing team in the state of Rhode Island right now is probably 35 agents. You know, I mean, working under one name. You know, whole companies like Ron Phipps, his whole company goes under his name.
It's like multi-level real estate.
So their production numbers look so much higher because it's the whole company under one. You know, it's all about numbers sometimes. But so you're asking about. One of the things that I truly believe in is being very loyal and surround yourself with a team of people that make you look good. So if I refer you a moving company and it doesn't go well, I could have done everything in the world perfect. And at the very last minute, those movers didn't show up on time or they were horrible. That is the end of the transaction. And that's the thing they're going to remember. The closing attorneys is the most important part of my referral base because, like I said, that's the last person they see when they're signing off their house or buying their house. And if it's a horrible experience and it's not done well, the 3 or 4 months I've put into that transaction falls apart at the last minute. So, and basically real estate attorneys, I don't want to say they're actors, but basically they are. By the time you get to the table, all the work's been done, all the numbers have been done, you're sitting there shuffling papers out. So you should be a comedian, you should be friendly, you should be, it's a performance, basically. Answer the questions, make it fun. People walk out there hugging and kissing, shaking hands, and it's over with it. You know, there are some lawyers that have to be lawyers, you know, and stiff shirts and not pleasant and not really interested in the personal aspects of the transaction. I don't care how good they are doing something else, but I'm not interested. At the time they're at the table, all the lawyering's been done. They've already done the title search. They've already done all the calculations of the numbers. They're there to explain things and get people to sign and entertain them. And it sounds funny, but it really is a culmination of everything. And everybody should be leaving that table high-fiving, slapping, hugging, squeezing, you know. And if you have the wrong closing attorney that makes it an uncomfortable or, you know, there are some attorneys have to make them let you know they're an attorney, you know. And if you haven't looked around.
That's a nice way to put it.
If you haven't looked around, just about everybody that's 10 years older than you that didn't know where they were going in life decided to go back to school to become an attorney. Mm-hmm. And most of them aren't practicing attorneys. They might have got the degree, but we've got an overload of attorneys, you know, a generation above you right now. And, you know, they're working in insurance or they're working and doing something else because they can't make a living. You know, there's still plenty that make a great living at it. And I don't want to put the profession down, but if you're a real estate attorney, by the time you're sitting at a table, you're an actor, you're a performer, and you're making you're shuffling papers, and that's how it should be fun. You know, it makes people walk away from the biggest transaction of their financial life sometimes, you know, with a good experience. And then
that's the point.
That's the point. Yeah. You know, I use the same painters. I use the same landscapers. I use this whenever I can because I know I would use them and that they're not going to make me look bad. And by doing that also, you don't think that landscaper finds out someone selling a house is going to call me?
Of course.
So you build up your network that way.
It's a network, you know, and you replace them sometimes and move things around. But, you know, I'm very loyal to the people that I know are going to make me look good. And because I'm very loyal, those people are very loyal to me. I mean, I can't tell you, I mean, I do a lot of estate work and I do a lot of court-ordered real estate sale work. And because I make those attorneys look good, you know, sometimes when you've got adversarial parties, either a divorce or a partnership breakup, one or the other one wants to hate you because you've been injected into the transaction. And I'm very good at having both of them at the end understand who I'm there, why I'm there. My job is to make them both whole or better. And that I'm not going to tell you anything I'm not going to tell you. And don't ask me to. And with that kind of respect, I've been very good, and I get judges that'll put my name out there because of that quality of being able to get two adversarial parties, not necessarily to like each other at the end, but understand that the other one's not going to screw the other one through their realtor, you know?
Have you operated the same way your whole life, or did you come to some awareness or epiphany where you said, you know, I just got to go. I just have to be in my own truth, and whatever people get attracted by that, I'm going with them? Or are you more chameleon-like, staying in your truth, but, you know, you're a people person. You know people.
I'm not a chameleon. I am who I am.
Right.
You know, and I want to say kind of a bad boy, if you will. Not bad boy, because I'm not doing anything bad, but there's, you know, I bucked a lot of trends in the industry, especially when I was a young guy, because the industry was changing faster than the people were. And, you know, just like I said, people would ask me, what's WWW mean, you know? And now I look at some of these websites that these guys that are 20 years younger than I am are coming out with that shatter anything I've ever done. You know, they're at the same stage I was at teaching the old guys, you know. I mean, I'm pretty good with social media. I embraced it and I've done very well with it. I think I could do a better job of it. But I'm also at a point in my career where things drop in my lap, you know, because of the amount of time I've been in the business. And I look
How long?
at 31.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many houses do you think you've sold?
So I know that as of 2000, I had sold over 5,000. So I haven't, that's in the state of Rhode Island. I mean, so because I could calculate that through multiple listing numbers, but you know, you sell a lot of houses that aren't in multiple listing and some houses that are out of the state of Rhode Island. So I don't really know the exact number, but I know that in 2000, I had sold over 5,000. You know.
So let's see, it's been another 23 years. 10,000 houses.
I don't know if I've hit 10, maybe. Between 1991 and 2000, I sold
9 years.
I sold 5,000 houses, but there were years I was selling 350 houses, you know. I'm sorry, it was 2010. I'm sorry. It was 2010 because I remember we did an ad when I sold my 5,000th house.
So from selling 5,000 houses, you get experience that someone who's sold one house or has sold 0 houses just doesn't have. And there might be things that you can only learn from experience. What are some of those things you think?
Well, one of the things that you can also step backwards a little bit. I'm just going to throw this out there. There's sometimes that I'll be involved in a transaction, and because I've been doing it so much, I forget that people don't always understand everything we're doing. You know, so when I was younger and going through the process with people, sometimes I think I spent more time on the minutia and explaining it. And now I kind of just expect sometimes that people know it, and I have to force myself to say, okay, maybe they don't know what a HUD-1 is, or they don't understand the calculations and how they're, so the way the numbers are put together at a final closing can sometimes be confusing, especially to older people. They might not have sold a house in the last 45 years, and they don't understand things like, in the town of East Greenwich, your tax year is from January 1st to December 31st. But you don't pay your taxes in that period of time. You start paying your January taxes in July, and you finish paying your 2023 taxes in the middle of 2024. So you pay on a fiscal year. I mean, you have a calendar year, but you don't. So when they get to the closing on December 1st and they say, oh, I've already paid my taxes for the year, when they know that they find out they still owe 6 months of taxes, they flip out. Even though they've paid what they were supposed to pay, they still have 2 more quarters of 2023 that aren't paid until 2024. So things like that, I have now kind of forced myself to kind of remember that I have to go through the whole process with them. For me, it's just, you know, Groundhog Day, you know?
Bill Murray.
Just pops up.
Yeah.
We have a friend who just got her real estate license.
Yeah.
And and we were just talking about it. We played, she's an adult, play tennis together. And she was saying, I don't socialize that much. I don't know how to find people. Basically, I've sold no homes. The only thing she's done, I think, is rented. She's renting out a piece of commercial real estate to someone.
Okay.
What does she need to hear?
So here's what she needs to hear. You said tennis,
Yes.
right? Sphere of influence. Her sphere of influence. Does she have children?
She has 2 children.
All right. So her children, her tennis, that's her sphere of influence. Does she go to a church or a synagogue?
But does she?
If she doesn't,
I don't think so.
so I sit down with an agent. I say, what's your sphere of influence? Okay. You're a tennis player. You're a surfer. You're a soccer player. You play the violin. The people that,
Maybe don't shut that off. You keep,
the people that you
That's
socialize,
your phone.
the people that you interact with on a daily basis are your sphere of influence. And those are the people that are your the building blocks of your business, because those are the people that know you, and those are the people that want you to do well. So if I'm playing tennis with you and you're going to sell your house and you know I'm a real estate agent and we're friends through the tennis, you're probably going to want to talk to me about selling your house. One of the hardest things that new agents have is they're embarrassed to tell people they're now in the industry. Not more because they're novices. They're not wearing a billboard in their forehead that says, "Hey, I'm a real estate agent." So I try to preach to these young agents, everyone you know in your life needs to know you're a real estate agent. You go to church, you're not that you're selling them, but you're telling them, "Hey, I'm a real estate agent now," and they're like, "Well, I'm not as knowledgeable as you about real estate." Tell him you work with Alan Gammons and he's willing to help me with any of the things that I don't know about, or we work together. So I say you build your blocks from the base through your sphere of influence. So I have them actually write down, if you're a bar hound, that's your sphere of influence. You go to the same bar on Thursday night to play trivia, that's your sphere of influence. That may not be the greatest one, but there's people there that buy and sell houses, So when I say my kids were my biggest source of business in my whole career, 100%, probably 100% more business came from my kids than any other source. And my number 2 source is referrals, probably a very close second. And my number 3 source is the professional people that I use in my day-to-day business. I deal with, new construction contractors. I deal with attorneys, moving companies.
Landscapers, you said.
One of the first thing people do when they're thinking about getting their house ready for sale is they call a carpet cleaner, a window cleaner. I got carpet cleaners calling me, "Hey, I think this house on Red Chimney Drive in Warwick is going to come on the market." They're cleaning it up and getting it ready. They didn't say they were going to sell it, but I'll bet you they're going to sell it. My carpet cleaner, but he gets every carpet cleaning job. First of all, he's phenomenal. They do Gillette Stadium. They're that good. That they have a contract full time to do Gillette Stadium. But they're bird dogging for me. I got this guy.
Bird dogging.
I got this guy who sells gravestones. It was his grandfather's business. He's in his 50s, and I've known him almost my whole life. He goes out and meets little old ladies and sells them gravestones when their husbands die or their parents die or whatever it is. And he finds a way sometimes to slip in, "Hey, by the way, if you're going to sell your house, my friend Alan sells houses. I get a house or 2 a year from my gravestone guy." Not joking. It's a true story. It's a true story. I'm not out banging on gravestones, but this guy's selling gravestones, and Mrs. Murphy's lost her husband and her mother in the last year, and she's going to move to Florida. She's got 2 houses to sell. I gave her your name. I'm not picking up the phone and say, "Hey, is the dirt dry yet?" But I'm not. I do get business from it. I do. That's funny.
Interesting. What about in the beginning when you didn't have those connections? You figure out. Sorry, I know I left. Did he already answer that? If he already
I
answered
did.
that,
So basically, I said,
so then I'll watch it.
If you're going to sit down with your friend who's the tennis player,
Sphere of influence.
what's your sphere of influence? So her sphere of influence is completely different than yours. Okay, you're a younger guy. You may have the same tennis friends. Okay, but that tennis group right there, they might know 4 different real estate agents, each one of them, but they're not playing tennis with them all the time. You know, that's their. So she needs to make them know that she's professional, involved fully in the business, and has access to more knowledge than she has. What company is she with? Do you know?
She's with. No, she's not with one of the big.
Okay, so
Should she
it's
switch?
also a mistake for her not to have somebody to mentor her that has significant enough business that they can share it with her. You know, somebody that's struggling on their own isn't helping her.
No.
Did you already say that, or was asked?
No, that's new.
Okay, that's new. Good. How did you find someone who could mentor you? Did you have one or no?
I really didn't. I mean, I had a lot of people and I'll segue here. One of the problems I see with the current real estate climate after COVID was there's a trend to not be in the office. People can work remote, Zooms and all that. I hate it because I learned from listening to what other people were saying and doing in the office. And I've always been a little bit different than some of my peers. When I was at RE/MAX, I learned a lot because I was the top producer in the office and I was very young and there was some jealousy. You know, there was people that were very nice to me, but they didn't really love the fact that I was doing so well. But I was the guy that when I was getting a listing next Tuesday, I was telling people about it before I even had it. I was already selling that house before I had it in my hands because it's about doing the deal. If I'm sharing it with you, great. Some of the real estate agents in the industry will get a listing and they'll have the listing and they'll wait until they can't sell it themselves to tell anybody about it.
Right.
I've always been the more you do, the more you do. Signs breed. If my sign's here, I've sold this one, the next door neighbor's got it, then it breeds. So I'm always very outgoing with my stuff, where there's a lot of real estate agents that are like this with it. They hug it and they keep it and they try to keep as much of it. They don't want anybody else to know what they're doing until they need them. Okay. That's a bad way to do business. If you've got an agent who's brand new and they're working in a company that doesn't have a vibrant business, they're going to learn some things, but it's going to take forever. You know, when I was the very first person in Rhode Island to have a team, in fact, they didn't even quite know how to deal with it. At RE/MAX, I was fortunate because there were RE/MAX agents in California and Colorado that were tremendously successful, top real estate agents in the world that were starting this team thing. And I spoke to this, one of them. I was a young kid, 23, 24 years old. And I said, I'm selling about, 40, 50 houses a year. And I think I want to do a team. He said, well, why? And I said, because I'm too busy. He said, okay, why are you too busy? I said, well, I got selling 40, 50 houses a year. He says, that's not enough for you to have a team. He said, well, so let's talk about what you're doing. I said, well, that's between the home inspections and the smoke. Stop you right there. So why are you doing a home inspection? Why are you physically going to a home inspection? I'm like, well, I'm selling the house. I said, couldn't you pay somebody to go sit there and report back to you at $12 an hour? I said, yeah. So go on and get another listing. Why are you going to a smoke detector inspection? Why are you picking up your dry cleaning?
How much are you worth?
Why are you picking up your dry cleaning? Why are you bringing your kids lunch to school when they forgot it? Said before you hire a team member, a real estate agent that's expecting huge commissions, build your business for yourself to the point where you can no longer handle the real estate part of the business before you add a team member. So he said, and my first assistant was a woman who had failed in the real estate industry, but she had knowledge of the real estate industry, which was helpful for me. She would pick up checks, drop off checks, go to town hall and take pictures of field cards, because back then you couldn't get it online. You'd go pick up the information about this house. She'd have to go to town hall to get it. Why am I doing that? That's what he's saying. So you're too busy because of that crap, If you're sitting in your office and you're working on something and you have an appointment for your car tires to get rotated, have her take your car to get your tires rotated. And so I embraced that. So I started to get successful as a team. at Remax, and I'd have other people come to me and they'd say, well, I want to do a team too. So we talk about how I did it. And the biggest mistake that they would make was, okay, and I'm not going to mention names because some of them are very successful real estate agents that never made a team out of it because of their personality. What would happen was, you know, when you have, I'd have over 100 listings sometimes. I think I have 14 right now because they come and they go. But there was times where you'd have a lot of listings. So I needed agents to show the houses and do open houses and things like that. And calls will come in, you know, you call me and say, that condo is exactly what I want. I want to buy it. Now, my reaction is, I've already got the listing. I'm getting paid on this. I'm going to give it to I'm going to send Tyler to go do it. He's going to make some money. He's going to handle the transaction. You want that house. That's an easy sale. Send him on. I'm on to the next one. What was happening with these other people is if it was a good call like that, they'd take it. And then if they had somebody, we're thinking about buying a house, well, you know, they'd give it to the other team members. So those team members saw the team leaders making all this money and they were struggling with the crappy leads that were falling out the bottom. I said, you're the successful person that knows how to keep going and building a business. The more you do, if that listing sells, the other people in that neighborhood are going to notice it. They don't know whether you sold it or Tyler sold it. So, you know, give them a bone, give them an easy one. Don't give them just the crap. You're the one that's better to deal with the crap because you can convert them into a buyer or a seller because you've got that knowledge and that experience. So if you're going to build a successful team, it's got to be built with a platform. It can't just be this way. You know, you can't have one person making this much and one person making this much. It just doesn't, they're going to leave. So time after time, they'd hire a team member and they'd fail. So you have to invest in a team. You have to invest in any business, you know, in anything you're doing. And this woman, I don't know who she is or where she is. If she ask her two questions, are you building your business? Talk about the sphere of influence, but is the person that you're working with or the people you're working with giving you opportunities other than advice here and there? Are they giving you any opportunities? Because if they're not, she's in the wrong place. You know, and I'm not saying
they made her sign some kind of contract apparently where she can't leave for another 3 years.
Yeah, that's not enforceable. So, I would take.
I'll send this to her.
Send me the. I mean, if you want, you can extract name. I mean, I can tell her how to get out of it.
Okay.
I've never heard of somebody tying somebody for 3 years.
With the right mentor, she would be.
Because she's bilingual also.
And
Huge part of the business right now.
She's actually trilingual.
Yeah.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
And she has it.
Could use it.
Yeah, she needs the right catalyst, you know. And I'm not saying it's me or my company. She just needs to surround herself with people. You know, if I go to a listing appointment in Cranston, it's not my market. I do sell houses in Cranston. But there are other people in Cranston that sell more than I do. When I talk to the seller, one of the last things I say, I hope I get this listing, but if I don't, list with somebody who has a volume of business in your price range and in your market, because those are the people who are going to have the most lines in the water to catch the fish. So you don't want to be listing with your cousin who lives in Barrington, who's never sold a house on this side of the bay. She might be a great lady, but she doesn't have the opportunities that I can give you. And I always flatter my competitors. You know, I'm not the best. I'm not the end all, but you want them to walk away knowing that they're going to make a decision, and they should make a decision based on a set of criteria. Who's going to represent you well, market your house well, get you the most amount of money possible, but also give you the most opportunities to get buyers through the door. You know, in East Greenwich, I have agents call me weekly that'll say, Alan, I've got this buyer coming from Ohio. What do you have? Because they know I've always got listings here. You know, I don't get that for Barrington or Cranston because it's not, even though I sell houses there, it's not my market. So in good times like 2005 and 2 or 3 years ago, when you know the signs weren't even in the ground, they were sold. A lot of people got in the business. A lot of people made money, but those people are making nothing now because they never learned processes. You know, I have an agent in my office right now that I'm kind of helping because she was she made a lot of money. She was making, you know, even in her bad years, she was making $250,000. She hasn't sold a house in 6 months. She's like needed somebody to to help her. And I said, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go tomorrow and you're going to print out every sale you've had since 10 years ago. And I said, you might not remember the names of the people, but you're going to be able to, through the database, pick up all these houses. And the people that are still living there, you should just call them. Don't ask them for business. I said, call them up and say, hey, I was thinking about you today. I was looking at some paperwork and I saw your street and I said, I'm going to give them a call. How you been? And don't say, oh, by the way, do you want to sell your house? I said, because now it's a sales call. I said, you're touching these people. And they think, oh, Cheryl thought, I said the name Cheryl. Cheryl thought of me. And then maybe 2 weeks from now or 2 years from now, they're going to remember Cheryl because Cheryl reached out to them and continued that relationship that she might have had 10 years ago. I do that on a regular basis, and I don't do it as much as I should because of the volume of business that I have. But out of sight, out of mind. You could have the best transaction in the world, and this woman who's a tennis player knows them through tennis, and they're going to give her a shot. But they might think twice about it if I've been in communication with them and contact with them multiple times since they bought the house. They might feel obligated. And I don't want to make people feel obligated, but I want people to think of me first when they're selling their house, or if they're talking to somebody who's thinking about buying or selling a house, I want them thinking of me first.
So you always have to be in their face.
Right.
So
Just be friendly to people.
In a very nice way, but
so without being creepy.
Yeah, because it seems like everybody who's a realtor.
I wear the words touch. You want to touch these people in such a way that it's not a sale. It's not trying to get anything. You want to touch them so I could do this all day. I know we're way off track, but for years, I would grab the local newspapers. And if I saw an article or a picture of somebody I knew or one of their kids, I would cut it out. I'd put it in an envelope, and all I would say was, thought you might want an extra copy of this, Alan. Didn't have my business card in it. Right? Think about it. How easy is that?
right.
Now you could just text people. It'd be even easier.
So handwritten notes are important because everybody's getting the text. Okay. And I'm not saying any one thing works, but there's certain things that I've done that I tell people about. And I said, just do this as part of your being. And the picture thing, I've always had a camera with me everywhere I went, especially through sports. My kids, I had great cameras. I was always taking pictures of everybody's kids and sending them to them. I listed a house in Signal Ridge in East Greenwich a couple of years ago. And when I was at the table with that couple, he was a couple of years ahead of me in high school. So I've known him, but we're sitting at the table signing paperwork. And he says to me, the only picture I have of my son from junior high school graduation is the one you sent me, because we were sitting on the other side of the room when the boys were coming this way. And you took what I did that day is I took pictures of any kid I knew the parents. And it had nothing to do with business at that time. It was all about, I got the camera. I'm going to take pictures of the kids I knew coming across the stage. So I sent this guy a picture 7, 8, 10 years ago. And he said to me at the table, that's the only picture I have of my son at the graduation, because we were on his back when he was coming across the stage. But the things that I mentioned, the things that have worked for me, I don't do all of them all the time. But I tell people, if you do one thing consistently, one thing all the time, whether it's handwritten notes or I can't even think of other things that would be examples. You just have to be consistent, and over time it just builds. This girl who's been trying to rebuild her business, she comes, I make her report to me every day. She's a friend. It's like, I want to make her accountable. And she tells me what she did. And she says, oh, by the way. And I say, oh, by the way, she hasn't rang the bell yet, but this one's telling her, my sister's thinking about selling her house and going to Florida. They're talking. She's not asking for business. She's talking, I thought of you, and it starts a conversation. Next thing you know, it leads to real estate half the time. But they might pick up the phone next January and call her first instead of the tennis lady because of that phone call.
Absolutely. So we buy this property. I lived in high rises my whole adult life. I left Rhode Island at 18. The thought of taking care of 20 manicured acres was daunting and scary. And the guy that was cutting the fields, just, it wasn't working. 20 years earlier, when we were at Quinnesset, my parents, not me, and they'd just gotten a border collie to take care of the geese that were on the golf course. And the head groundskeeper loved this dog. So I was always taking a million pictures whenever I'd go to my parents. And I took a picture of him and the dog. He's on one of the big mowers. Had it enlarged, threw it in a frame, and dropped it off at his office. He didn't even see me. I just said, I don't remember his name. Just give him this. I know how much he likes that dog. Fast forward 20 years. I'm thinking, where the heck am I going to get someone
To do 20 acres.
to do this? And I thought, there's got to be someone at Quinnesset that wants to. So I call this guy for 2 weeks on the phone. He doesn't.
Same guy.
Same guy. The guy with the dog, the picture with the dog, doesn't pick up the phone, doesn't return the call. So I put Julius in the car with me. We take a ride down there because I wanted to show him. And Alan, I wasn't even out of my car. He was already pointing, and he said, "You're the guy with the dog."
The picture.
The picture. But he said, "You're the dog guy," or something, something like that. It was pure intent.
Yeah.
I was just giving that guy a picture. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, the second guy, he's been cutting it for the 6 years, but to call him, wouldn't pick up the phone, or to text him. But like Alan was saying, a handwritten note or some old reference that was done with no motivation other than, here, I know what that dog meant to you.
Well, the world's relying on this too much. I mean, know how hard it is to get a hold of me, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes, like, especially with the texts, you're going through them and you're prioritizing, and you get to the end of it and you forget about it, and you have other people you meant to get back to, and by the time you go back to it, you got the next 10.
I don't reply to text for a day or two unless it's someone super important.
Well, I'm an early morning person, and I communicate a lot through email.
You like email more.
But because when I'm doing email early in the morning, there's no distraction. People aren't texting me. And I get a lot of work done. 4:30 to 7 o'clock. I'm sitting with a laptop on my couch watching Turn to 10, 3 shows in a row, the exact same show, how they do the show over and over again. I'm not really listening, but I might have the dog and I get some focused answers to emails. You get hundreds of emails a day sometimes, but when you're looking at them at a certain time of the day, at the end of the day, it's not a time to do emails because you're done. The first thing in the morning, you're fresh. You can go back through yesterday's emails that you didn't respond to. You get to your text messages. I mean, for Christ's sake, they get buried. Because especially your generation, that's your life. You don't pick up the phone or call anybody. You're texting them for everything. Where are we going? What are we going to do for dinner tonight? Where are we going to go? What movie you want to see? Do you even go to movies anymore? People go to movies?
Yeah, every now and again.
Yeah.
Only IMAX.
Yeah.
I'm picky.
Yeah.
You've probably seen a lot of negotiations over the years. What have you learned from or about negotiating? Any cases of particularly crazy people having at it with each other that pop into your head?
Do you like to negotiate?
I do, and again, that's something that comes with experience. some people just need to negotiate. If I wanted to sell a piece of land, if it was worth $100,000, I'd have to list it for $100,000, $150,000 for him to pay $100,000. If I listed it for $100,000, he'd have to pay $50,000, even though it's worth $100,000. It's not about what the thing costs; it's what he's paying for it, and it's got to feel like a win.
Always.
Okay.
I'm very tempted to butt in and ask you, how do you deal with that? With people who need to feel like they have a win, but you still need to get a good price for your client.
Well, you ever heard the expression, sometimes you have to pull the bait out of the mouth?
No.
So basically, sometimes when you get to a crossroad with somebody, perfect example, had a guy he's very, very wealthy, and a friend. I don't do a tremendous amount of commercial real estate, but I happen to have a guy that works in my office that I refer some of my small, what I call mom and pop Main Street commercial real estate, the small storefront, the small, that's not a big deal. I refer it to him. If I can sell it myself, I'll get involved, but most of the time I refer it to him. So I refer this friend of mine to him, and happens to say, I got the perfect place for him. It's on Route 2. He said it's a car dealership now. It's got a showroom, and it's got a work spot at the whole 9 yards. It's $2.5 million. And so he calls my friend, tells him about it. He's very interested. I want to see it. And days go by, he doesn't set up an appointment to go see it. So he calls him up and he says, well, I thought you were all hot and bothered about seeing this property. And my friend says to me, he goes, well, call me when it's $1.5 million, not 2.5. He says, what, do you only want half of the building? So he says to him, what, do you only want half of the building? So, it's just, you have to talk to people like that sometimes, even though it's humorous.
Right.
You have to, but also when someone makes an offer on a property, sometimes, let's say, I'm just going to be hypothetical, $750,000 condo, and they're offering $650,000, it's not going to happen. I know it's not going to happen. There's not even really a middle ground. I'm saying maybe this isn't the property for you. Instead of saying, no, your offer's too low. I can't say, you can offer whatever you want, but let's be realistic. And very rarely does something like that happen, especially in a market like this where something is priced a certain way and
there's no inventory.
Yeah. And somebody makes a stupid offer. A ridiculous offer. You can't condemn them. You just have to kind of say, well, let's look at something a little bit more in your price range. And then they go, but let's look at, have you, or you throw something out there that they're not going to be interested in, but say, maybe you should look at this, you have to, it's a personality thing too. You have to deal with every personality different. Some people would be like, offended, or, some people you just have to hit them right in the head with it,
But why do people find it so difficult to want to read someone or not be taught absolutes on how to deal with people? Well,
I can answer that question.
Okay.
Why is that difficult?
Yes.
Because it's much easier to try to follow a step-by-step process than it is to figure stuff out on your own. That's the whole reason you would ask someone a question about something, is to try to get some kind of insight that you don't have.
Even when you've done that repeatedly and it isn't successful for you, you just, or they're just in the wrong profession. They're in the wrong place, because there really are never two people identically the same. There's a lot of people you can put in different categories and give you certain approaches. But when you're right down and you're face to face and talking, I don't get why you can't intuitively, it takes practice. That part I get. But why can't you just say, okay, I can really hear this guy, or she feels like this, or from what she's telling me, this is what I need to say back. Can you tell this is one of my biggest frustrations or like you say, I would share all this marketing all these marketing things and actually give them what I used, 6 months after I used it. And they wouldn't even use that either.
Yeah. Well, everybody learns differently. If you see me in a class at my age, and by the way, we have a required,
Right.
I'm not listening to a damn word they're saying. I got through school teaching myself and reading and,
Can I trouble you to pull the mic a little bit?
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Or you can just pull it to you.
So everybody's different. Some people are hands-on learners. I read and I learn. So I can remember being in a macroeconomics class, and I had a Japanese professor. His name was Sean Sutsui. I remember it like it was yesterday because the guy couldn't barely speak English, and he was teaching this class in college. And after about the third or fourth class, I said, I need to get the exam schedule and just show up for the exams. And I did very well in the class, except I showed up 2 days late for the final exam because they changed the day of the final exam, and I was able to take it. But to make a long story short, everybody learns differently. I could sit and teach 5 people the same concept, and some people in their mind are like, that's silly. Or the other one's like, takes it like gospel. And the next one's like, well, I do it that way, but maybe I do it this way. Those 3 people are all listening to the same thing I'm saying, and all 3 of them are taking it a different way, and what they're doing in their head with it is what's important. And you can have somebody do the exact same thing, mimic me day after day, and never sell anything because they just don't know how to finish things. They don't know how to get to that next level or create the confidence and you have to have confidence in what you're doing, but you also gain the confidence in my industry of the people that you're selling, or they have to realize that you're the guy that's going to guide them through this very expensive transaction. And you can have all the tools in the world. You can have the hottest car in the world, but if you don't know how to drive it, you're not getting out of the driveway. So there's some people just not cut out to do what I do. That could be great stockbroker, could be, whatever, I could be a dentist, but a dentist.
Oh, no, not that.
Most of the people that I know that that have very high levels of education and very specific levels of it, very specific types of education, are horrible financially. Mm-hmm. Horrible. Like, oh yeah, I'm a doctor, I'm going to become a developer. Or I'm a doctor, I'm going to get into marijuana growing. That's what everybody's doing today. They think that because they're a great hand surgeon, that they're going to be great at growing marijuana, and they fail miserably. But they've got this money to burn,
right?
So they make that mistake, and then they got a friend of theirs that's going to get them to invest in alpaca pelts that are going to be the next. They get some.
Hey, I'll buy an alpaca pelt.
I can sell you one. It's funny you say that because I had a stockbroker sell me a pre-IPO once of ostrich farm, and he convinced me that ostrich meat was very much like
Chicken.
Bison.
It's basically the pieces like this were very much like tenderloin, but less fatty tenderloin. But the great thing about ostriches, they used every piece of it, the feathers, the whole, and he was telling about these farms where they grow them from egg to this in 3 years, and this is what each one's worth. And I was like, oh yeah, we're going to be the cutting edge of this ostrich farming, So I put $15,000 or $20,000 into this thing, and I think when I sold the stock, it was like 0.001 cents a share or something like that, But you're always looking, at other things. I know now my retirement is in real estate. I have stock portfolio, but if I've got an extra $500,000 coming in this year, it's not going in the stock market, or very little of it is. It's going into what I know. I deal with what's happening now. I'm good at doing, somebody's thinking, well, should I wait till next spring to put my house on the market, or should I have sold it last year? I sold houses in the last 3 years I never should have sold. My own personal house in East Greenwich, I sold it in 2019, but when I raised my family in, 18 months later, the guy flipped it for $350,000 more without doing a thing. You know, went from 1.85 to almost 1.6. I'm sorry, 1.185 to almost 1.6 in 18 months, right around the corner. And it was just the market. But I thought I rang the bell when I sold the house. So I bought a house today. I bought a rehab property. And
Congratulations.
Thanks. Some years I buy 10, 12 houses. This year I bought 2. Because I'm not buying, I mean, there's too many people like what you just saw that it's a sexy idea to go out and buy real estate and I'm going to flip it or I'm going to hold it. And I'm gonna, you know, so you have to have a mindset that when you buy real estate, basically it's an asset that if it's an investment piece of real estate that someone's going to pay for you. They're paying for it for you. And you should continue in this market. If you can make it cash flow, it might go down next year, down $200,000, but you're not selling it. You're 17 years old. If I were you, I'd buy a piece of property every year for the rest of your life. And then when you get to a point where you realize how good it is, you buy more.
What I would like to do.
Who's 50. She worked for Metropolitan Insurance, very low paying job back in the day when she was in her early 20s. I found a foreclosure for her, fixed it up, got her a RIMFAC loan. She was living in it. It was over in Warwick Neck, a little 3-bedroom ranch. Then she met her husband who owned a house. He was a contractor and he was a really talented carpenter, but not a high earner. You know, he didn't work well with a big group, so he was himself and maybe a helper. So he you know, they were going to do fine, but they were never going to
Drive a Ferrari.
Exactly. So when she got married and was moving in with him, they were going to sell that house. I said, no, you're not going to sell that house. I said, you're going to keep that house.
Rent it.
Right. And when she decided that she was going to have children, the income issue was a problem. And I said, okay, you know, by that point they owned another house. So they had the 2 houses that were rental properties and the house they lived in. And I said to her, if you're smart, your husband's a carpenter, you can buy a house. And if it sits for 6 months while he fits it in between jobs to fix it up, and then your job is to collect the rents. If something needs to be fixed, that's your job right now while you're raising your family. So she has a 19-year-old, a 21-year-old, a 23-year-old. And I think they own 14 houses that are paid for.
Wow.
I guarantee you they've never made $150,000 a year combined in their whole life. But they live in East Greenwich in a beautiful home, you know, probably a $600,000 home, $550,000, $600,000. And I found them, you know, they own a condo in West Warwick. They own a 3-family in Pawtucket. They own a lot of I like single families, you know, and I'll tell you why at some other point. But he had to have a knee replacement this year. They were going to sell a house again because they wanted to take time off. I said, no, you're not.
Just refinance.
Refinance it and let somebody pay for it again, you know. And they tapped into equity for kids' college and stuff like that a couple of times. But I said, don't sell it. Why would? Well, we haven't had a mortgage on that in 8 years. So I said, well, you could sell it and pay the capital gains on it.
Why wouldn't they refinance in 1031?
That's what they didn't 1031. They refinanced because they thought, well, we'll grab $300,000 out of this house and he can live for 6 months and they'll pay off the car and this, that, and the other. I said, why not grab $150,000, get yourself through it, and let somebody else pay the $150,000 off over the next couple of years? So that's what they did. So OPM, other people's money, you know. I owned some really shitty low-end rentals over the years that cash flow great, but they also take a lot of time and energy, mental stress, you know, collecting rents on Fridays from people who, you know, they got a flat tire on Thursday and can't pay the rent. That you have to be fully invested in full-time in that industry if that's where you're going to go with your investments. I prefer to have higher end rentals that maybe have a lower percentage of income. But if I'm renting a $4,000 house to somebody, they're part of the food chain, and the rent's there the first of the month. If something goes wrong with a house, they sometimes fix it and write me a note. I had to pay $68 to replace the front knob on the door. You're dealing with a different type of person. And when you're dealing with higher end rentals, you're dealing a lot of times with people who are renting because they want to rent, not because they have to rent.
I was going to ask you, is that market much smaller though?
No. I bought, last year, I bought 2 single family condominiums in Coventry over near the center of New England. And they were in the mid to high 3s. Interest rates, was 2 years ago, because interest rates are 2.75%. My accountant says finance all of it. I'm like, I'm a debt adverse, so I don't like to do that, but took his advice and financed as much of it as I could. My first tenant is a guy who moved here from North Carolina because his son came here to work at Schneider Electric, and he and his wife were retired, and they said, we don't want to own. We want to live where our grandkids are, but if they pick up and move to Ohio next year, we want to be able to pick up and move to Ohio too. So he's paying me $3,000 a month for a 2-bedroom new house. Happy to do it because he doesn't want to own anymore. I have a carriage house in East Greenwich that I've got a divorced father of 2 who wants to stay in East Greenwich only to be near his kids. It's a nice place, but it's a kind of over the top for the size place it is. It's downtown. It's got a bathroom out of $1 million house, but it's a 1-bedroom house, that kind of thing. And he just wants a nice place to go home, wants to be close to his kids, and he wants to rent until the kids are a little bit older, and then he can either fly the coop or buy something else. So there are people that rent for different reasons. There are people that rent because they can't afford to buy. There are people that rent
even in the high end market.
Rental. There's a rental right here on Tillinghast Road for $8,000 a month. And
is it that big house?
Big ranch. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a house on the corner of Pheasant Drive and High Hawk Road that's $7,500 a month.
Who rents that though?
Wait, is that why you're saying you like single families more?
So I like single families more, or really nice condominiums I own, because you don't get the dynamic of who's living above me and their dog's barking and and at my age, I don't want to be dealing with a lot of drama. I'd rather have somebody who's just dropping a check in the mail or automatic draft. I have commercial properties as well. So if I had one of the questions was advice to a fledgling real estate investor is be patient, number one, and at your age, don't sell anything. Don't flip houses. You can flip houses later. Use your capital to get in, let somebody else pay that mortgage for you, build up some equity in it, and then move on to the next one and start building you could build a fortune at your age. If you start now and add a house a year, by the time you're 30 years old, you're going to own 13 houses, And by the way, the first one you buy now is 3/4 paid off by the time you're 30, And if this becomes a track and it's something that you want to continue to do, then I have friends that are professionals that they want to have as part of their portfolio a couple of pieces of property they're performing. That's different than somebody who wants to
do it full time.
You can be a full-time real estate investor and be a dentist. Some of the professionals that I know, that make more money in their real estate than they do in their profession. I go through points in my life where I struggle to get enough cash sometimes because I've got everything in real estate and I don't like to pull it out.
Were you invested in real estate when the market crashed? And
I was. So one of the questions was if you had the ups and downs. I had in 2005, 6, 7 on fire. I just couldn't figure out ways to save the tax money. I was making not too much money, but you never make too much money. But taxes were a problem, and I was expanding, investing in my business, opening another office, this, that, and the other. And the market crashes, and all of a sudden, I've got 7 offices, 7 secretaries, 7 copier leases, 7 electric bills, 7 gas bills, all this stuff, and I was bleeding. And that was painful, but it didn't crush me. What really in 2012, I partnered with a friend of mine whose father, he was a third generation of a 100-year-old commercial construction company, one of the biggest in the state of Rhode Island. And he had an opportunity to build a 72-unit condominium project in Warwick and convinced me to invest with him. In the course of this project, his company went bankrupt and left me for the bag, holding the bag. I lost $4 million in capital in one day, gone. He filed bankruptcy, and I had to file temporary bankruptcy to keep the banks from coming because I had assets. But I had a lot of assets, and the first thing Bank of America does, they want to just attach your assets and force you to sell them. I had great lawyers, and fortunately for me, the $4 million isn't the only money I lost, but I also lost about 18 months of my earning capability outside of my real estate commissions. And thank God I was a high earning real estate agent because I lost all those other streams of income. I couldn't buy anything. I was kind of locked up for a while. But his company went under, and I had co-signed for a construction loan on these projects, and so they went for they went for me. So that was a lesson. And right at that time, I had 2 kids in private schools and one just starting college. It was a horrible time in my life, and I came through it, but it was a difficult time. And you talk about stress and sleepless nights because you just don't know what's around the corner, so you don't make, you make mistakes. The biggest mistake that I ever made was taking in partners that aren't real estate people, because they second guess everything you're doing. I'd rather sell you a house than be a partner if you don't know about anything about it, because they feel, everybody thinks they know. Everybody talking about the hand surgeon that's going to grow marijuana. I've had a lot of partners on different things. And some of my best partners are people that never talk to me again about the project until they get their check. And they love it, and then they're ready for the next one. I can't tell you how many people want to invest in things that I do. And I'm very selective because I don't need to be second. I'm good at what I do. I want to get it done and make money. Well, sometimes you interject a personality into that process, it becomes a problem. And truth be told, parents see a different vision of what their child should own, and a child has a different vision of what the parent should own. So if you and I were out looking at houses on the east side of Providence tomorrow and you fell in love with a house, he'd come in and probably hurt the deal.
Right.
That's something from experience. I mean, you want your son's first house to be something that he might not want it to be.
Right.
Doesn't mean either one of you are wrong or right. It's because you're two different people, and you want things for him and he wants things for him. And very rarely do they line up like that. So when I hear a couple say, my parents are coming down from Massachusetts to look at this before we sign the papers, I'm like, okay, don't spend that yet.
Exactly.
That
I've heard a lot.
So why haven't you pursued a property manager?
For myself?
Because it sounds like you manage it all yourself.
So no, I don't.
Okay.
I'm very selective of what I buy. I take very good care of everything I own. I mean, I get top rents because they're
Pristine.
Sometimes I do things before they need to be done. But I also surrounded myself, because I'm in the contracting business a little bit. I'm not a licensed contractor, but I buy and sell a lot of houses. So it's easy for me to pick up the phone and say, I need you to go to 24 Upland and replace the frames on the screens on the screened-in porch. It's easy for me. I don't have thousands of apartments. If I was running that type of business, I would definitely need professional help to manage and on a daily basis. I have a personal assistant who all my tenants speak to before they ever talk to me. If there's a problem, if she can't handle it, it comes to me.
So in the single families, are the renters required to maintain the property?
Everyone's
outside?
different. Everyone's different. Inside, yes.
No, inside, yeah.
Yeah. every property is different. Some people don't want to be dealing with anything. And I'll tell you, I have a couple of properties over the years that I've done what they call emergency insurance rentals. So I furnish them. They've got dishes in the cabinets, and if somebody gets burned out of their house, their insurance company is going to pay me $10,000 a month for a house that's worth $4,000 a month, because it's cheaper than putting that family in 7 months worth of extended stay.
Right.
My son Connor had a house that he was buying as his first house in Greenwood over in Warwick about 5 years ago. And we just got the house done. It was just, it was a typical old lady house. It was in perfect condition, but we bought it. It needed updates. So we updated the house, and he's buying furniture, getting ready to move in. He had the living room set and the dining room set, kitchen set delivered. Didn't have bedrooms yet, but I got a call from a friend of mine who was an insurance adjuster. He goes, I need this house just burned down. I couldn't make a point. He goes, you got anything? And I called my son. I said, you don't want to grab $7,500 a month for the next year? And that's what he did with his first house. He never moved into it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
How do you get those kind of deals?
So for the insurance?
Yeah, from the insurance. I've never heard this before.
I'm constantly on a list of, because from these insurance companies, but there are websites actually where you can post a property, and these insurance adjusters, like their job is to save their insurance company money. So a big house like yours, to find a replacement for that house, they got to give you like kind housing. Your insurance has got to provide you that. You're not going to find a farm with 21 acres, but they'll probably pay $15,000 a month for you to be in a house, because they have to give you something, of the caliber of what you have. There was a house on Pojak Point that burned 2 years ago. I put them into a house in Newport for $17,500 a month.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, they were in a $2.5-3 million house.
Right.
You're not going to find a $2.5-3 million house for rent very often, especially not a furnished one.
Right.
Just
How
as
reliable is that if you bought a house solely to do that?
so you might wait 3 or 4 months to have a tenant, and then all of a sudden have a 12-month tenant or a 6-month tenant. So,
I've never heard of that. That's new to me. I've never heard of that.
So this is the time of year when they happen: fires, water, frozen pipes, things like that. And the insurance company's trying to reduce their profile from the loss. So if they can rent your house for $7,000 as opposed to paying $450 a night for 2 rooms at the extended stay for a family of 4, what are they going to do?
Of course.
Yeah, it's a very, very lucrative part of the business.
Is there any other stuff like that that's not as main? I mean, maybe that is mainstream, and I've just never heard of it. But
It's not mainstream, and I try not to talk too much about it because, they've got to be nice properties. They've got to be well kept. Something that you'd want to move into. It can't be just IKEA furniture and.
because couldn't you Airbnb the property in the meantime, and then when that comes up, you have a 12-month tenant?
Well, it depends, because some places you can't Airbnb. I mean, like there are certain.
Yeah, they're starting to have issues with
Especially
that too.
condos.
Yeah.
So, your 1 or 2 of your favorite properties and why they were favorite to you that you've owned.
That I've owned.
Do you ever buy a property that, like, you just look at it and say, oh, I have to have this one?
My two favorite properties that I renovated were 2, not financial disasters, but they were. I'll give you an example. I bought this beautiful farmhouse in Wakefield. Fell in love with the property. My dad was still alive, and my dad had just retired. So my dad kind of got involved with me, and we both just fell in love with the house. And I bought the house. Forget the numbers, but
Doesn't matter.
we did things like we took the doorknobs that were in the house that were these beautiful copper plates behind the doorknobs. We sent them out to be refinished, replaced, and put them back on. As opposed to ripping the damn door off, putting a $99 new door on and nice new hardware. I spent $350 per door to restore the doors that were there over a course of time, because you fall in love with some of these things. I took the beautiful glass cabinets out of the outdated kitchen, the upper glass cabinets, and I had my carpenter build them into the bathrooms as glass cabinets on the sides of the mirror. I did things like that because I loved the house. So over the course of 12 months, and again, I'm going to be hypothetical. Let's say I made $50,000 selling the house. I could have turned the same money over 3 times on 3-bedroom ranches in Coesit that I paid $199,000 for and made $25,000 a piece. And I would have made $75,000 instead of 50, but it would have been 3. You know what I'm saying? It's time in that, and sometimes the bigger the house is, the more things you got to do, the longer it takes. And you might make 3 times what we would make on a small house, but you've also outlaid 3 times as much money and spent 3 times as much time, So sometimes for you, if you're going to flip houses small, and the problem with it right now is people pay too much for these things before they flip them. And so that's why I haven't been buying things. They're paying retail for wholesale houses, and they might make money, but they're not making what they should be making. I mean, there's some risk too. I mean, you get into a house and you find out that, you've got a foundation problem or a major septic problem. It's a game changer. It takes away 50% or more of your profit, and that's the end. You eat it. So the more you get into it, the more houses you buy, the more, like, I can walk into a house and with a calculator in my mind tell you what I'm going to spend within $10,000 or $15,000 just from my first walkthrough, because I know what I'm going to spend in the kitchen. I know how much it costs me per square foot to do the hardwoods. If I got to do windows, I got a ballpark of what it's going to cost me to rip the windows out and put new windows in. But that's just from experience, from doing it so many times. There's a development in Warwick off of Jefferson Boulevard called Weathersfield Commons. It's a condominium, one of the biggest condominium projects in Rhode Island. I've probably owned 7 or 8 units in there. And I can tell you, I've done the same unit over so many times that I know basically what I'm going to spend, so I can make a very educated decision when I buy it. For you, you'd have to get people in, tell you what it's going to cost and all that. For me, on a buying standpoint, it makes it, I'm at an advantage because, and for some of my clients, I can go in and say, you're going to spend $85,000 here, 100 on the outside or 70 on the inside, but 85 is my number, what you're going to spend to put this thing back together. So you do your calculations between what you pay for it, what you're going to put into it, and what we're going to get on the back end, and there's your delta. I'm more of a buy and hold person now.
Yeah,
I flip a few things here and there, but I'm looking to buy quality executive level rentals.
So you'd be buying now if you were me. You wouldn't wait.
Well, you'd be very selective. You said to me, Alan, I want to buy a house that I'm going to keep. If you said I want to flip one too, they're out there. The disadvantage you have is you don't have the electricians, the plumbers, the painters, all these people. I can refer people to you, but the first couple, you start forming relationships. If you're doing this on a regular basis, you're going to use the same people over and over again, because those are the people that are going to be reliable for you. They know you're going to be
reliable for them,
and you start forming relationships. And I have some great go-to people. And, one of the mistakes I've made over the years is I say giving them out. You say, I need a painter. Oh, I got a great painter. Oh, I need a driveway guy. I got a great driveway guy. I got a great mason. And then when I need them, I can't get them.
Right, because they're too busy.
They're too busy. But because I do refer them, they're also spot on when I need them a lot of times, right now I have a problem with plumbers. I mean, every plumbing company in the state of Rhode Island is too busy, and there's not enough people because people aren't getting into the trades.
Right.
And the amount of time it takes to get them to a level when they can work on their own. A lot of times they put time and effort into a young person that's getting into the industry, and they get sucked away for an extra $5 an hour from a bigger company, and you've put all this time and effort into them, So I know we way off the track there, but.
So if our friend who we've been talking about made it really big to the point where they're number one, and now it's time for them to start their own real estate company, what did you learn from doing that?
Don't do it.
Really? Why?
Because I don't own my own company now. You know that I sold my company.
Right.
You've sold it twice, right?
Twice. Yeah.
How did you do that?
So you build up a business, and the way people buy any company is based on a percentage, multiplier of the income, and if you sell it to the right people, they can grow it from there. And in the second time I sold, I kind of did a backwards merger into a bigger company. They were doing the exact same thing, the same brand.
Backwards merger.
So I was looking to expand my company. I was looking to buy, because I'm doing a project out in Cape Cod. Did I tell you this?
No.
I was looking to open up an office in Falmouth because I was going to be doing a big project out there. And when you have a franchise, they have to look at you and see, will you make it there? Is there anybody else that's on our radar that might be a Berkshire Hathaway franchise? Something like that. So I was getting some pushback from Berkshire Hathaway, and basically I put them on the radar here in Rhode Island. So for me to open up one small office in Massachusetts, I was a little bit concerned why they were giving me so much hard time and how long it was taking. And it turned out that the second largest Berkshire Hathaway company in New England was about to acquire or trying to acquire a 7-office Century 21 office on Cape, which would have put me right in the middle of their merger. So I had no intention of selling. But what happened was I was talking about this office, and the guy that owned the company from Massachusetts said, let's meet. And in the course of talking about that office, it ended up him making an ovation to me and said, look, let's not just sell it. Let's put the two companies together. We'll give you a piece of this. You won't have to run anything anymore. And we'll give you an incentive to help us grow, not just the business that you own now, but our business. So it took me out of what I do, the poorest, which is management. I'm not a great manager of people. I overpay people. I don't say yes. I don't fire people well. I'm a sales. So it took me out of that. Took me off that track and put me in the track that I'm good at: sales, growth, bringing people together, helping people work together. And I've basically taken the company that I owned, grown it here in Rhode Island for them, reaped the benefit of that because I get paid on everything that the company does in Rhode Island. And I've also helped them acquire a number of other individuals and small companies. And it just adds to my
override.
So it's been a win-win for me because I'm not worrying. Again, I keep mentioning copy leases or, who's getting a divorce, who can't pay their cell phone bill. That's out of my
purview.
That's great.
Yeah, you don't have to. How do you get people to work well together to make them grow?
I think that you stop making the people you work with think like your competitors and think about, helping each other, because the more you help each other, it comes around. Like, you learn about, instead of being selfish with your business, be generous with your business, and it comes back. It's hard to explain, and this is not like a very easy answer, but I was mentioning about when I was at Remax, there's people that wanted to start a team and how they failed as a team because the people that worked for them never make it.
Team members.
They would never make any money because the team leader was sucking up the good stuff and, giving them the table scraps and hoping that they could make a living with it.
Throw them a bone.
So you beat you beat the growth objective, by just leaving them there. You're never building a platform. You're just going this way with one person. If the people below you are making more money than they would without you, they're staying. And as they grow, other people get added on, and your income goes out this way and this way as opposed to just this way. Like, how many tires can you change in a day if you're a tire changer, right? If you had somebody taking the wheels off, handing you the rim, another guy's handing you the tire,
you could change a lot more.
You can change a lot more tires, right? The ultimate goal is to earn money. So what's the best? My own wife gets angry with me sometimes. Why didn't you have that? Why didn't you show that house? That's a $3.5 million house. Why did Roxanne show that house? I said, because I was on to the next deal. And I've already got that house listed. I'm getting 3% of it no matter what happens. And if she sells it, I'm still getting part of her income. But if Coldwell Banker sells it, I'm only getting the 3%. And I'm probably paying somebody to follow it through. In my own team, a couple grand to do the home inspection and whatever. So it's hard to understand because some people just want to go like this all the time.
All the time.
And you can be successful on your own as a jack of, no trade or one trade. But I think that if you live your life a certain way in your business and people feel the generosity that you're helping them, they want to help you too. So I could call any person that works in my company right now and say, I'm going to Florida for the weekend. I need you to do this for me. And if they can, they're going to do it because I've helped them.
It always gets down to the people.
Yeah. There are people I work with I can't stand, but they're good at what they do.
Exactly.
And you put the personalities aside, unless they're hurtful to my business, you tolerate it. You're not going to get along with everybody. I don't even like myself some mornings.
Well, it depends on if you've been to Felicia's for a coffee yet.
Yeah, the Felicia's tax, I call that. So I've been going to Felicia since before when she was on Main Street. We're very close friends. I sold them the property that building is in. And her husband at the time was dead against it because he was afraid of the cost of it. And if she failed, they had this big building that would fail. And at the time, East Greenwich wasn't allowing drive-throughs. They had shot down the McDonald's, which is where Centerville Bank is now next to my building.
Yeah.
They shot down McDonald's there, and they were the Dunkin' Donuts in East Greenwich is the #1 accident spot in Kent County, by the way. Did you know that? On Main Street, there's more accidents coming out of that than anything else. And that's part of the reason why the town doesn't want all these drive-thrus. But if you look at the footprint of Felicia's building, it's a Burger King. It's the exact footprint of a Burger King. If that business had failed, they already had the drive-thru approved, and it's the exact footprint of a Burger King.
Wow.
That's smart.
John Janicki's got us the plan for the footprint. So we'd have to change the building, but it was the footprint of a Burger King. And that's one of the most successful stories in East Greenwich. I brought her $1 million offer from Starbucks. I didn't actually bring it myself, but to make a long story short, she had $1 million offer from Starbucks before they went on Main Street, not for the real estate included, just to buy the business. And they were going to change it and shut it down and put a Starbucks in there because of the location's phenomenal. So I call it the Felicia's tax. I live in Newport. I stop at the post office and I pay my Felicia's tax, and then I go to the office.
Hey, it's better than paying it to
She sold it.
Uncle. Oh, she did.
Yeah, she sold it. Yeah.
Why do most people? It sounds like from what you've said that the best thing you can do to learn all these lessons is not sit here and talk to people, but go out and just pick what you want to do and do it. So why do most people not do it?
In the real estate industry?
Or just in general?
Well, in the real estate industry.
I don't know, but just think about your father and son. Think of how different you are. How you're very much the same in a lot of ways, but the way you learn and the way you do things, part of that's because you watch your father do it, but part of it's because you're a different person. What's right for you and for me are two different things. So that doesn't mean you and I can't do something together that's synergistic where we both make a lot of money at it. The way I make my living and the way the guy that's making $10 more than me and $10 left could be completely different. It's learned, but it's also a lot of self motivation and anything.
Where did that come from for you?
I just want to ask,
The self-motivation.
was there anything you needed to prove to yourself?
I've always been one of those people that wanted everybody to like me. It's from high school all the way. I just did things sometimes. The hardest thing for me was to learn that it's okay not to be liked by everybody and not to have everybody like what you're doing. That's very hard for me to this day.
Yeah.
I work on that because, I've ejected people from my life over time that never should have been part of my life. Not necessarily bad influences, but people that suck the energy and I surrounded myself with, some great people, but I also surrounded myself with some big sucking noises, people that I've tried to support or,
Right.
So it's not always unilateral. And I think that, I'd rather be the guy that was taken advantage of than the guy that was taking advantage of somebody else. Right. That's my personality, and it's a friction with my wife and I sometimes because she sees it. She can see from the outside things that sometimes I didn't get until a year later. Better judge of personality, or especially when you're not in the thick of it. Sometimes you can see and say, not necessarily the person's got your best interest in mind.
So now that you don't have to have everyone to like you, would you say that your opinion of you matters the most? Or what percentage are you there?
No, I don't think it's me. I think it's very, very important for me, for my children, to respect me and what I'm doing, and not just my business, but as a person, as a human. I'm not, one of the questions you asked in the written about is, I'm not very spiritual, but I firmly believe that, basing, at even if it's a self-sacrifice to put your children and your family and your close friends ahead of you, ahead of your maybe sometimes not necessarily your goals, but your happiness. Sometimes I think I'm a happier person when I'm making
other people happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm amazed that you took the time to read my 100 and something questions.
It was a chore. It's a good thing you didn't send it to me 2 days ago, because I wouldn't. No, I'm kidding.
You would have forgotten about it.
No.
How did you meet your wife?
So my wife was a freshman at URI in the pharmacy program. My wife grew up, she was born in Vietnam. She lived in New Hampshire, and New Hampshire didn't have a pharmacy program. So she was at URI with an exchange, and I was heading to Newport with my buddies one night, and we stopped at my friend's parents' house, and his younger brother, who was a freshman at URI, was having a party. And she was there, and there was a lot of girls there, and we were drinking beer and playing poker before we went to Newport. And it's a long story, okay? All right?
It's all right.
Well, I want to run this by you. It's, believe it or not, it's been 2 hours and 56 minutes.
Wow.
So.
All right, well, you want me to finish the story a little bit? Or?
Yeah, absolutely.
We just don't want to keep.
We have, so as long as you have time, I've even got more.
We have all the time.
So we're sitting in the kitchen playing poker, and there was girls all over the place and guys, and I cleared the table of the money. I won everything, and these guys are college kids, and I was 23. They're all 18, 19-year-old kids. So my buddy says, time to go.
Before they beat you up.
No. So I gave these kids their money back.
Oh.
It wasn't a ton of money, $20, $30, whatever it was. I was already at that point in my life pretty successful because of the publishing business. I had a sports car and a condo, and, feeling pretty good about myself. I just gave these kids their money back. So we get in my buddy's car, two guys I went to high school with, and we're heading down the street in North Kingstown, and my buddy hits the gas. He's like 80 miles an hour. We've been drinking, and I'm like, stop the car. I'm not driving to Newport with you. You're a jerk, So after being made fun of, I got in the car. I got out of the car and I walked back to the party, and I called my roommate to come pick me up. And I'm sitting on the couch. I'm a little bit pissed off, to be honest with you. So and this party's going on. These are younger people than I am. And there was another girl who was kind of throwing herself at me, and really kind of aggressively, drunk. And I was very polite and nice and played that card. And about just before I left, this beautiful girl says to me, "You must be a really nice guy." I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, first of all, you gave the guys their money back. And then this beer goggles, they called this girl. That's how bad she was." She said, she was all over you, and you were just polite. And she just must be a nice guy. So I'm looking at him like, "You're pretty cute, So within 2 minutes, I had her telephone number. Back then, there was no cell phones. I had her telephone number, and I was pretty smitten because she was gorgeous. And but I hadn't paid attention to her. But the fact that she saw something in me, and I never dated another girl after that.
Wow.
Yeah. We were married pretty quick after that too. But
do you remember how you got her number? What you said?
I think I said, why don't you give me your number? I'll give you a call sometime. And then I played the card. I played it, actually. I was a big brother at the time. Remember a Big Brothers program? I took my first date. I took her to my little brother's football game. Pop Warner football game. So, played the nice guy card a little bit harder because, trying to win the battle, not the war, the war, not the battle. But that's a true story. Because my buddy was drunk and acting like a jerk.
No coincidence, though.
How many years have you guys been married?
31.
Wow.
Congratulations. Just past 30.
That is a big deal these days.
That's not easy either,
No.
No.
You live with someone 24/7. It's not easy.
But you know what? I think that makes the good moments. I'm not married, obviously. But it seems like that makes the good moments all the more merry and worth it.
Yeah.
Anything in that arena that you would tell someone my age to
Interview them like it's a job. The girls, guys, whatever it is, you want to have a relationship with someone, interview them. And by the way, a date should not be something that's like, it has to be the next one. You can go out with somebody one time and not be a jerk for not going out the next time. It's just, I have a lot of friends because of that. Sometimes especially guys that get trapped in a situation because they don't want to back away from something, and even though it's not going in the right direction, it's easier to stay in it than back out of it.
I never understood that.
Yeah, I've done that.
We humans have a difficulty with relationships. And the way I explain it is we go into it with too much attachment to the outcome. And we just can't be comfortable with what you just said. If it's naturally meant to be, it just will be. If it's not, okay, just walk away from it. But for some reason, there's that attachment that we can't let go, or we want it to work. Is it our ego saying, you got to make this work?
I think it's fear. It's fear of hurting somebody or making a mistake.
I agree with that.
I agree.
But I also know people that have stayed in relationships they shouldn't have stayed in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or for the kids or any of that stuff.
Yeah. You got a whole world ahead of you. Just take your time.
No rush.
Seems that way.
You're going to do great.
I hope so.
I'm going to take a picture of you too, so that I can just say this is my very first podcast interview. There you go.
All right. We look all professional.
Oh yeah, you do.
If you send that to me 2 years from now, I'll know you're. I'll make sure I give you a call when I buy my next house.
Okay.
When you, did your dad or family member ever give you a lesson that stuck with you throughout your life?
By example or verbally?
So my father, who I love very much, was not a risk taker because I think I told you his father was an alcoholic and lost kind of a family fortune. And my father had to be a man when he was a boy because of his father. So my father was, I think as I got successful, my father kind of lived a little bit. He was very proud of me and lived through me, but I was buying and selling cars. Like, he's like, what do you need that for? You need that for, because he was more conservative. I have never met a person in my life that spoke badly of my father. My father was, I think the first time I heard a swear, I was 14 years old. I mean, just very honest and didn't, everything was for his family. So from a mentor standpoint, from a business standpoint, I don't think he was a mentor for me from a business standpoint, but as a human and as my character, it's a lot because of my father. I have a lot of, I mentioned earlier, my friend's father that had a printing business. I mean, he was a big mentor for me because he encouraged me when all that was happening was, you should buy this thing over in Newport that they're not doing anything with it. You could take it to the next level, and So, and he was like a second father to me. He really was. Still very close with his family. His wife passed away last year, and he's failing. He's in his late 80s. I think he might be 90. But
How about your parents? Are they alive?
my father's gone. My mother's still, she's 81 and still plays
Sorry to
golf.
hear that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, 6 years ago. But yeah, there's you take a little bit from everybody, as you come along. And in the real estate industry, like I said, I learned from people. The brand new agents, I'll learn something from, because everybody's got a different view and different way of saying something, or if you carry it into your own presentation and your own business, so you learn what you're doing by watching what other people are doing in this industry, kind of like I do,
I've got 3 more, but go ahead.
Quick. My grandfather said you had 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you need to listen twice as much as you speak. And the other maxim he gave me that I'd live my life by was, you can learn as much from the doorman as you can. He would say the president, but he meant like the CEO. You just treat everybody with respect.
I personally prefer to be with the doorman.
Right.
I do. I'd rather be with a real person.
I would think that, right, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I have friends on all the whole spectrum, but, I love hanging out with the quahoggers in town and,
But I if I have to expend any work to be with you, then I know I really.
Yeah. And, I think sometimes successful people, especially the ones that have a chip on their shoulder, feel like they've got to be one-upping each other, and
Always.
When I talked about flattering my competitors, I mean that. I mean, there's no, if I'm sitting here interviewing to list your house and I'm talking bad about the person you're talking to other person, it makes me look bad.
Right.
All right. So I choose to flatter them and then tell maybe why I do something differently or better. Not necessarily, I never use the word better, because, everybody wants to say I'm the number one at this, I'm the number one at that. And, ultimately, who gives a shit? It's a you look at all these real estate agents with all these numbers behind them, letters and all this shit. I don't even know what the hell it is. Like, I am a professional divorce realtor, LGBTQ, purple, red, and orange, professional. Okay. How many purple, red, and orange people have you sold houses for? It's just a way to pat yourself on the back. And if you get in a crowded room in a cigar bar with a group of guys, sometimes it's more work than anything. And especially, I don't mind talking about what I do because I like what I do, but I'm not talking about, I did this, I sold that, I did that. It's like, that's a different personality. I don't want to be around that. If I was doing that in here right now, you'd be like, get this asshole out of here, I think. Right? That's how about the general guy that makes $30,000 a year? He doesn't want to hear about the $100,000 commission and the car and all that. He doesn't want to hear about it. Yeah. It's and especially somebody who's, I got a visitor.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. They want to hear about your fishing. They want to hear about, something else. They don't want to hear about your success because they tend to, makes them feel bad about themselves.
When I was younger, I totally defined myself by my business and my accomplishments. And then, I don't know, maybe you just grow up, or maybe you face the things in your life that make you feel like you need to prove yourself to that other person, or prove to yourself that you're better than that other person. And then this wonderful thing happens, and it's like, no, I just want to hang out with that person for who they, who they really are, not putting the airs on, not being superficial.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I don't know, my world just started to feel much more enriched than it did earlier. And it actually motivated me more than the numbers. that I could really chit chat and talk to people that I really wanted to do that with rather than the people I should do it with. And that to me was a huge turning point.
I think that, especially in a town like East Greenwich, you don't go to the school, though, right?
No.
I see a lot of the kids who go to the school, though.
They're all pushed in a certain direction by what their parents think, and the school system here has issues.
Yes.
Big issues. And part of that's the parents, probably a big part of that's the parents. I used to go to sports with my kids. My daughters went all through East Greenwich for high school. My boys went to private school, but I'd sit and listen to the parents. And I could never be a coach. I had to beat someone to a pulp for some of the things that they'd say. So my dad used to go with me because we had 4 kids who were always at a field. My dad, my daughters played one daughter played softball, and I'd sit on the third baseline away from everybody because I didn't want to hear it. And my dad and I would talk, about the game or about life or whatever it was, and you'd be listening to these people, and some of the women are just like, their kids. Why isn't this? Why isn't and the coaches and the referees? And it's a helicopter parent thing. It's tough. There's no right answers,
No. Just throwing it out there.
What's your favorite book or movie?
Okay, so the book is easy for me because I read a lot, and mostly I go down rabbit holes. So none of those books that I read when I go down a rabbit hole are my favorite books. So a favorite book's a book that you'd go back to time and time again. So I read that, and I actually said, I got to really think about this because, I went down 57 books about the Kennedy family and, the Civil War at one point. And I've most recently the New England mob. I've read everything, just because you go down these rabbit holes. And I go through months without reading, and then I'll read 4 books in 2 days. That's the kind of reader I am. But when I was in high school, I was always in AP Englishes and creative writing and all that. So I love literature. And do you know who Thornton Wilder is?
I don't know, but I will know because I'm going to
start. So Thornton Wilder is a playwright, and he wrote a few books, and he wrote a book called Theophilus North. And Theophilus North was a book about, he was a twin, but his twin died at birth. And that's not in the book at all, but he wrote this book as if his twin had lived. Wow. And what his twin's life would have been about. And a lot of people don't know that when they start reading the book, but that's really what the book was about. It was about if his brother had lived, and most of the book is set in Newport, Rhode Island. Oh. So there's some landmarks and things like that. And there was a movie made about it, which sucked, but it was called Mr. North. And it was built, I think it was in the late 80s or early 90s, but he wrote the book in the 70s, and he wasn't known as a novelist. He was known as a playwright. But I've read it 4 times. In fact, I read it this summer for the 4th time. And, I enjoy it very much because it's whimsical. It's a novel. It's about this young man's life. He stumbled upon Newport, Rhode Island on his way to Maine. His car broke down, and how he survived in the different social settings of Newport. He taught tennis lessons at the Tennis Hall of Fame, and he hung out was basically a YMCA was where he lived, and he hobnobbed with the rich and the poor. You should read it. It's a very good book.
Okay.
All right.
I will. That's why I'm starting to ask. I want to make a big list. So everyone will have a list. But what did you take away from that book?
So I wasn't taking away a lot from that book because that was a book I read for enjoyment. It was a novel, not something I was trying to learn something from. Book. Yeah. Or like I said, I've read everything there is about the Kennedy family from way back before John F. Kennedy was ever born, his grandparents and what, bootlegging and all that. And it was because I got interested in the subject. I met through a friend. I have friends in the entertainment industry, and I met, who Richard Dreyfuss is?
A very familiar name, but I don't.
Richard Dreyfuss was did you ever see the movie Jaws? No.
He has.
Did you ever see American Graffiti? No. So Richard Dreyfuss was a very famous actor, started in the 70s and 80s. And Richard Dreyfuss is civics. He's a very brilliant man, Mensa brilliant. And I got a chance to meet him through my friend James Woods, who's another actor who grew up in Rhode Island. When they were filming a movie in Georgia, I spent 4 days with them, and I spent 4 days sitting at a table like this, having breakfast with Richard Dreyfuss, talking about nothing but the Civil War, and things that and I'd read a lot about the Civil War at the time, and things that he would pull out of his hat I had never heard of. It made me want to go buy another book. And he sent me a couple of books that, just obscure things about the Civil War. There was one book he sent me, was called Stealing Lincoln's Body. You ever heard of it?
No.
It's about the plot. When Lincoln died, his body traveled across the country to be seen by Americans. And
Fiction or nonfiction?
it's a nonfiction book. And it starts out very, very kind of macabre, because it talks about the how embalming at that time was just coming from France.
Yeah.
And before Lincoln's time, when people died, they were buried next to their church in the church plots. And now, about that time, they were building these big cemeteries, these big, beautiful cemeteries. So the books was talking a little bit about that first, and then they got into this death, the reconstruction of his face because it caved in from the bullet wound, and the plot. There was an actual plot to steal his corpse and hold it for ransom. And
That's right.
They set up a sting and caught the guy. It's an interesting book. It's a short read. It's only about this big, but something like you would never think to buy. Like, if you see a Stealing Lincoln's Body, would you ever buy it? No. Richard Dreyfuss sent it to me.
I will check that out.
Wasn't he in Jaws?
He was. That's what I said. Have you seen? He was the professor from Oceanography.
Right.
But he was in.
I always liked.
He was in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Right.
He was interesting guy. But we literally sat across the table like this 4 mornings in a row. And my friend James was, would you two shut up? Let's get out of here. We just talked about the Civil War.
So you've always been fat. I can't keep you. We'll talk. I'm reading Thomas Jefferson's biography.
Which one?
The one by John Meade.
Okay.
There
was one recent one by the guy that writes everybody's biography.
Isaacson.
Yeah.
Did he do Jefferson?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. He's tried everybody.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay. I just read his Elon Musk biography.
Yeah.
And I like that. I thought
Did you read his Steve Jobs one?
And I read the
haven't
Steve
read
Jobs. That was your copy that I read. Both of those I thought were very good. Couple more things and then I'll let you go. What was the most personally challenging part of your life that you had to get through?
This podcast.
No. Actually, this is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Awesome.
Thank you. So I have 2 sisters, and my older sister, and I'm very close with my sisters. My older sister lost a child at infancy, but then had a child that died at 10.
Oh.
And navigating that and watching my sister and my parents and everybody go through that was probably the most challenging time in my life. And as far as the time that took me out of, I didn't care about things, I just wanted to focus. That was a very difficult time for me. Yeah. That, I've had challenges with business, but that doesn't compare.
No.
I think that's one of the most unnatural things that can happen.
Well, watch somebody you're very close to go through that. I mean, I can't imagine as a father it happening to me, and then, having it happen to her twice. It was hard.
It happened to you too?
No. Watching my sister go through that.
Oh.
She lives here in town. She lost, 2 kids. It's hard.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. That was probably the most challenging. I've been through, medical things with other family. My wife had a brain tumor, but she survived it, that kind of thing. But those are difficult, but to watch the actual, demise of a child and watch your sister and family go through that was hard.
My reason for asking that is if someone were sitting behind their screen and they were in the same place you were then, is there anything you'd like to say to them?
I don't know if I could. I mean, I think that I tried not to be selfish at that time because I was affected traumatically too, because I was, but just trying to be as supportive of them, was challenging, because what do you say? What do you do? Just be there.
Just be there. And not even try and solve anything. Just be there to listen.
Yeah, she's probably one of the strongest people to this day. I mean, she talks about it, and I mean, me, I'd be just,
Nice. Have you always been self-confident? Would you say you're self-confident?
I think I'm self-confident, but I don't think I'm overly self-confident. I mean, I second guess myself a lot,
Would you say you were always, or did it take something for you to realize that you could be?
I think that from a late teens, I was a very confident physically, I was an athlete. I was, always on, I don't want to say had money. I was always not worrying about money. I made money and I was going forward where a lot of my friends were, so I had a lot of confidence in myself. You always second guess a lot of things too. I think you're 17 years old. I'm sure that you're self-confident, and I know you are just from the times I've met you, but I'm sure you second guess a lot.
Yeah. That's what I was nodding my head about. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think the confidence comes from external things like that, or more from something internal that you figured out at that age?
I think self-confidence needs reinforcement. So if you're starting to feel a certain way, but you're getting signals outside, they're turning in another direction. It can stymie that or suppress your confidence. So when you've got surrounding yourself with people that are not selfish or not falsely pumping you with BS, that are supporting, listen, obviously you've got supportive parents. You're doing great things with this. If you decided to be a punk rock drummer, I'm sure they would support you. But there's different levels of support.
Dad, I've got this idea. I think I want to be a drummer.
Yeah. yeah. I think it's
What's it going to cost me?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Stick with the tennis. Yeah. It's easier on the eardrums. So, well, I think. Good.
So, did you get new bike high when you were a kid?
I think you're going to have to explain what that. Do you know what that means?
Like, when I was a kid and I would get a new bike, that was like, I just thought I was on top of the world. That was of everything. That was like the coolest thing to me because it was freedom. When I was on that bike, and in those days, there were neighborhoods and you could basically go anywhere. And I call it new bike high.
Interesting. I guess, one of the great things about liking what you do is it never gets old,
right.
And I am going to write a book about the funny things that have happened to me in the real estate industry. And that would be another whole interview.
Oh my God. Yes. Gotta have you back.
So, I mean, I literally have I found dead bodies. I found people in the rack. You name it.
I should have asked you.
You name it. I mean, it's like, I literally have some of the funniest real estate stories, either that I've been personally involved with or that I've known about, that would be probably a bestseller for anybody who's ever been in the real estate business, but it's going to be hilarious. Because
can you tell one?
I'll tell you one. And this is when I was 23 years old and freshly minted as a real estate agent. I sold a house for Mr. and Mrs. Anderson on Long Street in Warwick, and they were in their 90s. They built the house after the war, World War II, and raised their family there. Mr. Anderson was already living in the Scandinavian home, nursing home, and Mrs. Anderson was wait till the house sold, and then she was going to move in with him. The house was $79,900.
I don't know why I'm laughing.
So wait,
because I know
I sell the house pretty quickly, and the young couple that bought the house said, "Can we come back and show the kids? They haven't seen the house yet. They hadn't closed on it yet, but they wanted to show the kids." So Mrs. Anderson said, "On Sunday, I'm going to see Olaf, whatever his name was, at the Scandinavian home. Go show them the house. Just don't let the cats out." I said, "Okay, don't let the cats out because they were house cats, and the neighborhood cats would kill them." So we go through the house. They got a 14-year-old son and like a 9-year-old daughter. It's hot as hell. It's August day. We get done through the house and we're standing in the backyard, and one of the cats comes running out right by us, and I don't know how the cat got out. I'm like, shit. So the 14-year-old son and I spend the next half an hour chasing this cat through the neighborhood. We finally get the cat, and I'm not too happy with the cat. So I open up the door, throw the cat in, lock the door, and go home. About 2 hours later, I get a phone call from Mr. and Mrs. Anderson's 70-year-old daughter asking me to come to the house. The police are there. There's a problem. So Mrs. Anderson came home from the nursing home, opened up the door, and realized the house had been burglarized. The house was literally destroyed. There was broken plates, things off the walls, curtains torn off the windows, just vandalized. Well, when the police get there, they go in the house, and they quickly realize that I threw the wrong cat in the house. So I took a neighborhood cat and interjected it into a house with 3 cats that belonged there for 4 hours. And those cats chased this cat around the house for 4 hours, knocking every Hummel. You know what a Hummel is?
I know what a Hummel is. My mom collected
The
them.
plates off the dining room hutch. Because basically they were running around the house for 4 hours chasing 3 cats chasing 1 cat. They found the cat on the top of the dining room curtains quivering like this. And I mean, the curtain was half ripped off, and that's a true story. $3,000 worth of damage. You know, they were very nice about it, but I threw the wrong cat in the house.
Oh my God. So what made you think it was that cat? Did it look anything like
Did you
the
find the
cats?
original cat?
No, that cat that was in
Never
the
came
house
out?
never came out. I just assumed it did. Oh. Because it was coming down off the porch. It was a black cat, like the black cat that was in the house 4 minutes ago. I figured one of the kids let the cat out. So I threw the wrong cat in the
I
house.
get it now.
There's a life metaphor.
That's just one, you know.
So cats, big liability.
Big liability.
Big liability. Make sure you stay right. All right, last 2 questions. We have to ask these questions.
All right.
I won't release this next bit for another 5 years. If you were going to watch this in 5 years, what would you say to well, just for fun, what would you want to put in a time capsule for your future self?
See, I told you. No, I don't know. That's one of those questions I would say, I hope he doesn't ask that, because I really don't know. I would say that when you would ask the question about what I would say to my great grandchildren, is I would just say that the family is more important than anything you're doing, and let your family support you, but you support your family. And in the long run, whatever your life choices are, they'll be better because of that.
Alan, thank you so much for taking the
My
time
pleasure.
to do this.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to this conversation with Alan Gammons Jr. If you know someone in the real estate industry, please consider sharing this episode with them. Now, I'd like to leave you with this quote from John F. Kennedy. "Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past are certain to miss the future." See you next time.